And I'm ready to clap whenever. Whence do we want to?
When do we want to? 20? 20.
20?
20?
20 sounds good.
20 works.
Spectacular. Discord cut out the first of all of y'all's claps, so it just sounded like silence. It was great.
It's like, oh no, did this work?
Good.
Yeah. And back to turning on the filter. Oh, Audacity decided our recording volume was going to be 0.1. I have switched that.
Yeah, I prefer not.
I saw a thing, someone suggesting that it actually just takes your Windows recording level.
It's not true, because mine's at full.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my Audacity recording level does whatever the hell it wants. I can't do anything to change it.
Yeah, I will open that setting just to be positive, but yeah, no, that's...
Okay. I hadn't looked at it before I
incorrect.
started recording, so I was like, yeah, whatever. I mean, it was somebody who wouldn't
Open
necessarily know.
Recording, properties, levels. Yeah, no, that's at 100%. There's no way. Like, you can definitely attenuate that one, but I don't think it ever goes dynamic like Audacity seems to.
I don't know if dynamic is the word I would use for what Audacity does.
Okay, it doesn't decide to just roll a dice like Audacity does.
Yeah, exactly.
I downloaded the entirety of Wikipedia last night.
I don't have... Okay, I'm gonna...
It's gonna be used for a purpose, but just thought I'd let you know.
Okay. I'm gonna start the podcast.
Oh,
wait, I should see what episode number it is. Okay. Hello and welcome to Gaming Fyx, episode 194. I am your host today, Pat, and I am, let's see, not your partners, because that's an Andre thing, but I am you, the listeners' favorite entire website that one could download. And I think that answer probably, I guess, is twitch.tv, as sad as that makes me to say. Joining me this week is Alex.
I've downloaded Twitch TV within the past week, so yeah.
And Allison.
Talking about Wikipedia, but I could go the other route and go with TV tropes.
There you go.
Hell yeah.
TV tropes is a more interesting download than Wikipedia, I feel, because Wikipedia is a useful website and has a lot of good stuff on it, but like you're getting everything there, right? Like at least TV tropes, everything's going to probably be interesting on some level.
Where you click a random trope and you go, that is a trope, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, but like Wikipedia is like just the most largest amalgamation of human knowledge gathered over many lifetimes.
I mean, it's probably a better
it's more
website.
Important than TV tropes, but
TV tropes is more fun.
Yeah, I don't need. If you click on the odds of getting something boring if you click on a random Wikipedia article are pretty high. When you consider the entirety of human knowledge, most of what we know is pretty boring. Let's be honest. Whereas TV tropes, it's just like it's pretty good average. Like, I mean, not every article is interesting,
tropes,
but
you're
most.
Like, oh, huh, yeah, that is a trope, and it goes like I just clicked on one, and it's a like classical mythology of basically the mythology of hospitality, like in Greek mythology, and then you get to something that's like anime bullshit next, and next is smelly feet gag. It's like,
see, look, three bangers right in a row.
Gag as in like it is a joke, or gag as in they are gagging.
Yeah,
as in a joke of like, wow, feet smell real bad. Like in kind of cartoon.
If you click on a random Wikipedia link, you might get like chair, object.
Right, let's see. I'm gonna go to Wikipedia.
Well, I mean, it's gonna give you it's gonna surface the interesting stuff.
Random article.
Where is that random article?
1895 in Italy.
Well, like that's interesting, but
that's the next one. Shonen Knife, the band. Okay.
They're not gonna give you the boring stuff though in the random article button.
List of trolleybus systems in Germany.
Okay.
2019 Northwestern Wildcats football team.
There you go. That sounds like
Old
something
Stevensburg, Kentucky.
River Swale.
Amanda Gorman, an American
Theo
poet and
Herkenrath, who is a Belgian racing cyclist in the 30s.
Oh.
Bogey.
But it doesn't have any information. It's
you know what? I think we should stop doing a podcast about video games, and we should just. It actually is crazy that nobody has come up with this as a podcast idea.
C31H5204, which is
a number station.
Balsaminol B or 7-beta-metho. Oh god!
Oh, it's a chemical.
Xycoturbida 5.4-DN 3S23R29 triol.
There you go. That's most Wikipedia articles. And
Florida Seafood Festival. I think that's
I'm not saying those aren't interesting to someone, but it is wild that no one's made a podcast where you just click random article and then
talk about it for an hour.
Yeah, or even like a half hour, and you have to.
And you have to talk about the Florida Seafood Festival.
So you click on one article and that is your topic for the next hour. Yeah, you learn as much about it as you can, and if it happens to be something you're an expert on,
chemical proteins or whatever, you have to talk about that for the full half hour.
Yeah, I would say maybe you could do it ahead of time, just like an honor rule, and then that way, if you pull something that is like truly not fit for podcasts. I have read some articles on Wikipedia about some like crime related events that I would not want to talk about on a podcast.
I think I've talked about this on this podcast before, but like every year or two I go down the serial killer hole on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Which
it's not something I
wouldn't recommend people do it, but it's like profoundly interesting in a morbid way.
Yeah. I get true crime novels. But I don't understand and like I get that some like Serial had a tone that was like very like it didn't feel like it was like celebratory of the bad stuff.
It was inquisitive.
I think there are certain podcasts that do it really well. There are a couple of podcasts that I listen to sometimes that are like genuinely like, okay, we're going to tell you this story and we're going to be appropriately in tone. And then sometimes but then I was like, okay, let's try another true crime podcast, and then hey, we are your true crime buddies, and you're just like, okay, no, thank you.
That's such a weird.
If you're interested in the former, I can recommend the JCS Criminal Psychology YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Which that stuff gets fascinating. Okay, yeah, the last wiki article I hit. I'm just gonna give this because I've never heard of this. 1953 9-pin bowling world championships. What is 9-pin bowling? I've heard of 5-pin. I've heard of 10-pin. I don't know 9-pin.
I think it's the same as 10-pin bowling, but with 9 pins.
So is it where you have to, when you do the break, you have to shoot them all in order?
Looks like it's basically in a like a diamond formation around a central pin.
Okay, so it is like 9-pin or 9 ball.
Looks like it's primarily played in Europe. Anyways.
Hey everybody.
You know what else is primarily played in Europe?
Oh man, that could. Wow, that was
That's not true. I mean, it is played in Europe a lot, but I don't know if it's primarily played in Europe.
That is a very fair point. Is that what we're going with first? Okay.
Yeah, tell us about your golf journey.
Yeah. So, have you guys ever played a golf game to kind of relax?
Oh, absolutely.
Golf video game? Absolutely. I wasn't sure if we were going on golf video game or golf in real life.
I would say more in video game form.
Yeah, I that's like one of my favorite chill out game types to play, just because there's something very satisfying about it. And
I didn't really talk about it, excuse me, but in the PGA game, most recent one was in a Humble Bundle recently, like a Humble Monthly, which I do, and so I played a few hours of it, and probably will play more of it at some point because it's a good golf sim.
Yeah. Have you ever played what was that called? Desert Golf on the phones?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is just basically endless mini golf.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Have you ever played or wanted to play a short hike?
Yes.
Then may I recommend A Little Golf Journey to you? That is the name of the game. I believe it is on Steam and Switch.
I thought this was descriptive that you went on a little golf journey.
I thought so too.
I deliberately did not capitalize it so to lull you into a false sense of security. But no, this game is called A Little Golf Journey. It came out yesterday, so October 15th. And it is just a really relaxing 3D golf game. Like, it's a 3D golf game. It has very chill music.
It looks so cute.
And it's kind of, in some ways, it's kind of reminiscent aesthetically of like kind of low poly, like a Monsters Expedition kind of style, that big blocky style, and just, you know, blocky trees and blocky environment. But like, it's nice, it's pretty, it's cute, and like you can wander around the environment, not as a physical character, but you can move your camera around and look around and stuff. And there's lots of little secrets you can find if you want. Like last night I played a course and I was like, whoa, there's like a translucent cube here. What the hell is this? And I threw my ball into it, and then it's like it popped up like a 30-second timer, and it's like, okay, now you're basically going to speed golf to hit all of these orbs that are just going to show up. And then you do that, and it unlocks like an alternate path on the overworld, because this game has an overworld. And it rules. It's a really nice game. I'm only like 7 or 8 levels in. I just played it a bit before bed last night, and it very much seems like one of those, you can pick this up, play it for 20 minutes, half an hour, relax, have a good time, make some progress. Just one of those kinds of games. And it's fantastic. I think it's really good.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, the way that you're describing this, I'm like, okay, I'm immediately going to have to buy that later, because that sounds really good.
Yeah. And like, I read about how it goes later. And it sounds like the difficulty curve is really, really gentle, and eventually it does get like challenging. And like, if you want to go for 3 stars, because it is kind of, it doesn't have pars per se. It's like, oh, if you get to the net, I was going to call it the net. If you get to the hole in like 2 or 3 strokes, then you get 3 stars. If you get it in 4 strokes or 5 strokes, you get 2 stars. And if you get it over that, you get 1 star. But like, you're always going to pass the course. And then it's kind of like, I don't want to say like a mobile game. It's more like a Mario 3D world, where in order to like progress to certain gated levels, you have to have at least 8 stars over the past like 5 levels or something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah. So like, there's progress. There's like kind of what seems to be a story. I guess it's told through like letters that you're like reading and then flipping over and reading what's on the back of the letter and stuff like that. But it doesn't really have a narrative to speak of yet. I don't know. But it's great. It's I very much recommend it if you want something chill. I don't know if it's on Game Pass or any of that stuff, but yeah, it's been.
Yeah, no, it sounds sounds like definitely something I want to play.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if I have that much more to say about it, because it's not a particularly complex game, but it's
sure.
Good. It has,
but I hadn't even
heard
of it. So.
Yeah, it also has lots of accessibility options if people want things to help with aiming, things to help with like depth perception, to my understanding, and just things of that nature. So, yeah, good game.
Well, perhaps the opposite of a cute and relaxing golf game. I also see here that you played more Cruelty Squad.
That does sound like the opposite.
But weirdly, it does kind of enter this like weird Zen state of like, you're just in it and you're not thinking about it very much.
For sure. Yeah, I would agree.
Like it I think we talked about it the last time I brought up Cruelty Squad, where like at first you were fighting against its systems, like the reload thing with just how oppressively bizarre all of it is. And it's like, oh, if I shoot these guys and I gib them, all of a sudden a bunch of rats pop out, and those rats are very tiny but do a lot of damage, and also like that kind of stuff. And it's like, how do I reload this gun, to the point where it's like you're just like, why am I playing this? And then you get used to it, and then you just don't think about it. So it gets zen in that way.
It's interesting that you describe it that way too, because at this point I think you've played more than I have, and given that it is a game explicitly about corporate violence, it is fascinating that it does become a sort of flow state eventually. And I'm sure that's intentional.
It certainly remains oppressive and just mind-bending for the entirety of it. Do you know which stage you got to, Pat?
I don't remember. It was about halfway through the list of levels.
The swamp, maybe?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, or the bog. I forget what they call it, but
yeah.
I'm a little past that as well. I just finished the casino, which is just as anti-capitalist as you would imagine. It's really funny. You know how you can go up to characters in that game and hit R and talk with them? And sometimes they just have long blurbs they say at you. Other times they just say, ah.
Yeah. Yes.
And those moments are all my favorite, when they just go, ah, and it's like kind of weirdly disturbing. Talking with the people.
It's directly weirdly disturbing.
Yes, especially when you run into the guy that's like being kept in a pig pen, and he's pretty much naked. Except for his shorts, and then you talk to him and he just goes, ah. That one is pretty weird. When you get to the casino, talk to pretty much everybody, because they've got some buck wild shit to say. It's great.
I believe it.
Anyways, Cruelty Squad remains good, I think.
It's something that if you are interested in the concept of games as art, you should play just because conceptually it's a thing, know?
Cruelty Squad art? I don't know.
Oh, it's absolutely. I mean, yes, I think all games are art personally. That's my stance on the matter. But
even Postal 2?
Yeah, it's bad art.
That's the thing. It's like, I'm really, especially not to get too conceptual about this, but I'd much rather have a very wide definition of art than have a narrow definition of art. So I'm willing to say pretty much like every game is art. Like I would agree with that, just because it's like, I do think that there is an element of that, especially when it comes to like not just like visual art or story, but game design as a whole is there's an absolute art to it. Even if it's not good, it's still art.
Well, like games, film is the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a combination of art forms being employed in concert for something, and I think that the game design part of it is an art form, and every single game is a piece of art. That video game, at the very least, I don't know how when you get into things like, are the rules of baseball art? That's a lot harder for me to, I am not an art student.
Yeah,
but I'd still lean towards yes.
Tricky, but I would rather again be more broad than being more than being less broad. Because also there's plenty of terrible movies out there, but it's like,
there's still art.
There's still art.
I've seen the argument.
Room is still art.
Yeah, I've seen arguments from
it's outsider art
who are in art school who say that like things have to be of a certain quality level in order for them to qualify as art, and I just think that's like,
oh, bullshit.
Man, if they're teaching that in art school, I'm glad I didn't go to art school, because that's stupid.
No, and that's like also very, oh god, that's very narrow-minded, and that's very exclusionary, especially since what's considered quality is often determined by specific groups of people.
Well, it's subjective.
It's subjective too. I personally really like, someday I'm gonna get like real deep into art history, but specifically about outsider art, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But I like, one of the things that I really love, like, this is getting off on a weird tangent, is specifically certain art movements that have a lot of like kind of outsiders. Like, I love the arts and craft movement, because it does include a lot of people that aren't necessarily considered necessarily art, but it's like focused on decorative and things. I saw this display of prints recently where it was like art prints, like wood block prints, but like the person who made them had to like carve them into like cutting boards, because like that's what she had access to. She wasn't trained, but she learned how to do that. It's like, I think that's the most interesting art. Anyways, this is me going off on my art tangent.
No, I agree completely with you. And I think it's relevant because I think Cruelty Squad is the kind of thing that a lot of people would look at and go like, that's not art, but it is low art. Like, it's absolutely, it's intentional in everything that it's doing.
Yeah. And especially with what it considers to what it's doing with critique. Like, I feel like I would say that's like the like epitome of art in a weird way.
Absolutely.
No, I would tend to agree. And I don't know why, but in the background I was doing my own research of things that I'd be like, would I consider this art? And yes, leading me to the Wiggles fan art gallery. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all art. That's absolutely art.
The Wiggles are absolutely
100%
the most of art. So yes, anything is art if you put your mind to it, but I think Cruelty Squad in particular is its own kind of thing, which is artistic in its own way.
Yeah. I still recommend it to anybody with a interest in that kind of thing, and at least a laptop, because it'll play on you need a separate mouse. That's the biggest thing. If you don't have, if you're a trackpad user, it would be.
I don't know how that game would ever work on a trackpad, especially for reloading.
Yeah, but if, as long as you got a mouse, then and at least a laptop, you should play that game, because I think it's interesting. You may come away hating it, but you'll at least have grown.
I have a gamer. Friend. I kind of looked at my Steam's friend list of people who played it. I saw Andre had played it for like 4.5 hours, and I saw my other friend who played it for 27 minutes about 3 months ago. So, divisive.
Well, you've also got Good Life on here, which I have also not yet played. But
yeah, I haven't played it, but it's out.
I'm excited to put that in. Like, I feel like even the reviews that are mixed are like, man, I want to play that so bad.
I haven't actually seen any reviews yet.
But the rock paper shotgun headline was kind of circling around on Twitter, and the Good Life review: tonally stupid, structurally broken, surprisingly deep, and occasionally self-aware. And then, it ultimately is like, I'm glad I played this, and ultimately it's weird and kind of janky at parts, but
hey, that sounds like my kind of game. And I actually,
it's sweary.
Yeah, RPS is like one of the places I actually would read a review like that and go, okay, let me see what you have to say.
Right, me too.
That's
me too.
I kind of haven't been anticipating this game because Deadly Premonition 2 was so disappointing on so many levels that I was kind of like, whatever, one day Good Life will come out, maybe it'll be good. But now that it's here, I mean, like, I'm interested to see what's up with it, since I mean, it's on Game Pass and I backed it, so I have it on Steam. So I'm gonna install it this weekend and check it out too. Yeah,
I'm gonna probably play it later today. I'm interested.
The other review quote from Nintendo Life that I'm a big fan of. It feels like a hidden Japan-only gem of the PS2 era, discovered in a bargain bin on a holiday to Tokyo. And
that's like, great.
Yes,
right.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I'm in for that.
Exactly.
Like, that's kind of exactly what I want out of Swery.
Absolutely. Same.
The thing that I appreciate about Swery, particularly from Deadly Premonition 1, that I'm hoping this game taps into a little bit, is I find I think part of why, and this is a personal preference thing, this isn't a me dunking on anything, but like things like Animal Crossing are so close to me, they're like almost what I want. But and like Stardew is almost what I want, but I want just a little more mystery, I guess, in those kinds of like, and it's not an aesthetic thing, it's like I want a little bit more mystery in the walking around and talking to people. I want people that are like a little bit weirder, and I want things that are a little bit like stranger happening on the periphery. And Stardew has a little bit of that with the like dungeon and stuff, but it never, in the like 5 or 6 hours in that I've ever gotten, it's always kind of like everyone's like, no, we're pretty normal, there's just also a dungeon here. And the same thing with like Animal Crossing is like you get those some of those characters who are written really weird, and I love them, but also there's no like, I feel like I don't have enough of a purpose for me because I don't enjoy the end game elements of those games that they're designed for. So something that's like janky, weird, sort of open world feels like the wrong term, because I'm not talking about a map game anymore. That means like Far Cry, and I don't want that. It's not what I'm getting at, but I want like open area town with people to talk to, people having their lives. That's what it comes down to. It's like people living their lives, and they also happen to be weird. Like my favorite parts of Deadly Premonition is when you like show up and spy on people in their homes, and they're doing like they're doing really weird stuff, but to them it's part of their normal routine.
Yeah. And then you got Francis York Morgan talking about movies for like 20 minutes straight.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm looking forward to. It seems like The Good Life taps into less of the horror aspect of Deadly Premonition, but more of that sort of small town. That's something that, you know, I watched Midnight Mass recently, and it's something that that show gets, at least early on, that a lot of media doesn't. People make things that are like homages to Twin Peaks all the time.
Oh, sure.
And the reason that I think Deadly Premonition, the first one anyway, is a better Twin Peaks homage than most similar media, even than things that I like. Like, I like Wayward Pines. The thing that Wayward Pines does not understand is Twin Peaks isn't about people saying weird, vague mysteries and some creepy stuff happening. It's the way that that show is so slow paced, and like the way it shows people's lives. That's to me what it really comes down to, is the way that it is so interested in the lives of these people. And I think like Midnight Mass gets that early on too, where it's like small community, every person has an impact in what happens locally, and it's very interested in their lives. And I think that's something that Swery does really well with Deadly Premonition. So I hope to see that kind of in this game too, is a look at people's lives.
I would also recommend Welcome to Elk, if that is interesting to you, because that I should play that too. Yeah, because it's very much that vibe. And also, like, with you describing The Good Life that way, it just kind of seems like Hot Fuzz in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, I mean,
Hot Fuzz rips for similar reasons.
So good.
For similar reasons,
absolutely. No, 100%. Yeah, yeah, and I think like the one of the things that I like to talk about with Twin Peaks is like a lot of people will say, oh well, the first season's amazing, some of the best, the second season's garbage, and I think that's so wrong, because the second season is extraordinarily boring at times. It's very stilted, and some of the writing is really weird. But I love the second season of that show because it is like 15 episodes of just like people doing their lives without a lot of the mystery being revealed. And I think that's extremely interesting, to take that approach to you set up everything and all this intrigue in the first season, and then it's just like, what are people doing day to day while this crazy mystery is going on? And I get why people don't like it, but at the same time I think it's great. And that's why I like video games like Deadly Premonition that sort of take in that that concept. So definitely gonna play The Good Life, and it might be time to check out the that Deadly Premonition re-release they did.
Yeah, I hope, because I haven't yet played The Good Life, but I hope there's at least one point in it in which they say it is Friday once again.
Yes. I'll be interested to see how much, like, how many swearism things are in it, because I kind of wouldn't mind if this one was a little more on its own and not connected to a lot of that stuff, because it is so different tonally from what it looks like. But also, I don't know enough about it to know if it stays different tonally. That's kind of why the headlines you were sharing, Allison, is totally fine, but I'm actually not going to read any full reviews before I get into it, because I just want to sort of see what happens.
Get into it genuinely.
I was just kind of like skimming through them, going like,
yeah.
I was like, oh, I saw that, and I was like, what is this? And then so I started skimming, and I was like, oh wow, okay, this is like weird. It sounds weird, but like ultimately positive, and I'm like, perfect. Yeah. That's what I want.
I'd like to be surprised, I guess, by it is the thing. And I haven't really paid attention to any of the updates, so all I know is
same. And that's about as I don't actually read them.
Wait. Oop, my Discord freaked out for a second there.
Yeah, same here.
All right.
Well,
anyways,
we'll actually talk about what the Good Life is as a video game probably next week.
Probably.
We'll have a chance to play it. Allison, you've been down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, so oh my god, speaking of niche PS2 games, I'm playing niche PS3 game. Niche PS3 RPGs right now.
Sorry, not allowed. PS2, cool. We're not going into PS3.
It's tough. I'm playing. Well, sometimes the graphics like look kind of PS2 level because they're
most
not.
Of them were PS2 games that were delayed to PS3.
Oh yeah, or like they're like super niche, so they're like, okay, let's have a cheap, like the production value is like limited. Although the production value, like I feel like it goes where it counts, because like the aesthetics are really nice. The music is like perfect. Like the music of this, I'm talking about the Atelier series, guys. So I finished Ryza 2 before, like, I think right at the last podcast. And so for the last 2 weeks, I have been spending too much time playing the first 2 games of the Arland trilogy, now quadrilogy.
This is why I'm into this, because you can call them, they have different, there's mini series within the series. That's
absolutely
good.
Yeah, and it's like, and I just started the 3rd game of this mini series, and the thing that's interesting is that they all have their own separate stories, and the protagonists are like they're just now starting to add games that have the same protagonist, which is new for the series. But most of the games have separate protagonists, and it's kind of just, here's the next wave of alchemists. So Ryza is the most recent series in the Atelier series as a whole. And so now I've been going back to what is basically the start of the more modern era of the series, which is with the Arland trilogy. Later, they added another game to the Arland series, which I'll be interested to play, but I'm kind of, I think, trying to play this through largely chronological order from this kind of newer series. So I've been playing this the Arland series, which is kind of interesting because a lot of people talk about these as being like the hard one, and it's like subjective, where they're not necessarily hard, but the thing that's kind of interesting about them is that it almost feels like a different genre of game in a lot of ways, because a big part of it is time management in a way that most JRPGs don't have, and that the later games in the series definitely don't have. Like Ryza definitely doesn't have any of this at all. But for the first 2 games that I've played, Rorona and Totori, like you have specific amounts of time to do stuff, and if you don't do it in that time frame, you lose basically. So like in the first one, Rorona, you have basically, the story is your teacher did such a bad job managing this alchemy workshop that the kingdom you're in is trying to shut it down. But they're willing to give you a chance. But you have to keep doing these requests for the kingdom to keep it up. So every 3 months, there's basically like individual things, and then there's kind of an overarching goal of making your alchemy workshop more popular and going through all the stuff. So you really have a limited amount of time to be able to do things. Like I played the game and then I immediately did a new game plus because I was like, I got a normal ending and I'm like, well, that's bullshit. I want a good ending. So I went through and played the new game plus, and even with those, I still wasn't able to see everything in the game just because there's just so much that you can see and do, and everything takes time. Like traveling to different areas takes time, doing alchemy takes time, and everything. So basically you really have to, like, time is almost a bigger resource than anything else, to the point where you have to kind of go, okay, I want to get these materials. However, it's going to take me like 5 days to get there, 5 days come back. And then to craft that item, it's going to take me 2 days. So really, do I really want to spend that amount of time doing that? But I don't know if I can beat this boss if I don't have good enough bombs that I've created. So like it's kind of like you have to weigh these options. Totodori gets like a lot harder because I started out the game, I got a bad, like first playthrough I got a bad ending, second playthrough I got a normal ending, which still kind of ended in a kind of a bummer. And I'm like, I might go back to it again later, but I'm like, I need to be done with this for now because everything takes time, including like if you gather stuff on the world, it's like, sure, you can do that, but that'll take up half a day. And there's like 6 nodes in this area, so that'll take several days to gather all of them. So you could do that if you want, but also to get any sort of ending that's not terrible, you have to literally build a boat, which takes so much time, and then sail across
build a boat.
Exactly.
You gotta play like Bejeweled. Yeah.
Exactly. No, but it's like, but it's like all this level of like time management that is real. I think really interesting for a JRPG, and like a lot of people in the fandom are very like in guides of like which Atelier game should I start with. A lot of people talk about like, oh, this is scary. But I think they're really interesting games, and they're really designed to be played multiple times.
For sure.
So they're generally shorter than like Ryza. So like that's why in the past 2 weeks I've played the first 2 games twice each, because you can kind of zip through the intro and you can zip through a lot of the text. So you just kind of go, okay, well, this is where I failed last time, so here's what I'm going to do. I want to be able to see this specific thing and this specific thing. But again, for both of them, I still feel like there's plenty of stuff I haven't seen yet. And I could theoretically go back and play more, but I'm like, I can't.
How long is a playthrough? Like, is it the kind of thing where it takes you an hour and you're doing many of them? Or is it like a 6-hour thing? Or
it's like playthroughs usually take about like 10, 15 hours.
That's kind of what I was.
That's significant then.
Yeah, I mean, but like the second playthrough goes a lot faster.
Because you've seen a bunch of stuff already.
Because you've seen it, and then like
dialogue and stuff.
You can skip all the dialogue and everything. Yeah. And I think it's still significant, but it's like on the short end for JRPGs, right?
I think Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that like it's an interesting concept because I feel like the concept of sort of time management in games generally, not that it was ever something that was pervasive across tons and tons of games, but you know, you look at like Dead Rising and stuff like that, and like it feels like the way that a lot of studios took it was either in the, well, we can monetize this and make mobile games where time is like the gate, or we can make roguelikes where you play them over and over again and the playtime is like 1 to 3 hours for a run. And I really appreciate the idea of a game that doesn't that is more like, no, time is passing, things are occurring, but it's not a roguelike. It's just
right.
There's just things you're going to miss because they pass you by because you're doing other things. I think that's awesome. I wish there were more games that did that.
And I don't think it's not necessarily hard. It's just hard if you want like a specifically decent ending, or if you want to see everything, or if you like want to see everything on if you want to see everything on one playthrough, basically you need to go through a guide. But
I'm not actually making this. I just want to bank this transition and say, Pat, you've been playing a game that's very much the exact thing you described of, oh, there's events happening on a clock where you replay it all the time. And you're trying to make things line up and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not actually transitioning.
No, yeah. I mean, I think
it was a good one to bank away.
Yeah, I think it's a good comparison though. Like time loop games are really in right now. And while I also like that concept, I think the idea of a longer narrative game where stuff is just happening, I think this is, I've been thinking a lot about like my gaming tastes recently, and I realized I talked about this a little bit, I think last podcast, but that is the core of my favorite kinds of games, is games that have stuff happening that are happening whether you are participating in them or not.
Oh, for sure. Like with Totori, I actually played the second half of the game 3 times because like my first playthrough, I was like, I'm going to try and reset all, like go to a past save and see if I can get a decent ending, which I could not in that playthrough. But there's like a whole ass like festival subplot that I completely missed on those second 2 times, where I was just like,
that's interesting.
Where it's like your hometown is doing a fishing festival. You could help this person like confess his love to somebody, but I just like completely missed it. And then, but the first time I played it, I fucked it up. So he's like, "You fucked it up for me. Why did you fuck it up for me?"
Did y'all ever play Chrono Trigger?
Yeah, I don't like Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, but it kind of had people on Earth. Yeah, but it definitely had a lot of those concepts, like of just like little tiny branching paths that you could totally miss. Which is fascinating. For some reason, Chrono Trigger for me, please don't send me hate mail. I get it. It's a great game. It's just not one that I ever connected with. I think the thing that and these games I may have a similar reaction to them if I were to play them, but I'm okay with it being the illusion of stuff happening. Like in Skyrim, does it really matter that a character walks from their house to their job? It's not like anything's going to change. It's just a script that runs, unless you do something to fuck it up. But even then, it's just going to resume once you're no longer there to fuck it up. And it's not even running if you're not in that town. But it's enough of an illusion while I'm playing that I still get immersed and sort of sucked in. The thing when I've tried to play Chrono Trigger is it feels much more like just like branching paths, kind of like, yes, there's stuff you can miss, but it never felt to me like time was really passing. It was more like narrative was passing. So I think that's why that stuff never really hooked me, even though you're right that when you look at everything on a flow chart, it's just as much of a choice as to how you spend your time in that game as it would be in anything else, like more immersive simmy sort of open world sort of things. So it's an interesting subject though, because I think that's part of why I've been so into something like New World, is even with all its problems and even with it being not the best action RPG by any stretch of the imagination in terms of gameplay and combat, the fact that I log in and it's like, oh shit, stuff happened while I was not playing. Like now this faction holds this town
and people are talking about how that we need to manage the corruption in this zone. That stuff's very interesting to me.
So, Allison,
yes.
do other games in the Atelier series do this, or is this like one of those kind of, like you said, the different miniseries have different mechanics? Like, is this kind of time-based stuff in all of them?
This is something that's kind of been kind of phased out of the series. I think that some of them have a little bit of a time management light in later games, but it's not punishing at all, which is, it's kind of interesting because like Ryza has a time system, and so like when you are like doing alchemy, time is passing, so like you'll start at a certain time and you'll end at a certain time, but it doesn't really matter all that much, except for the fact that like certain people aren't going to be out at night or something, so it's like, okay, I want to go, trigger this activity, but I can't right now because it's 2 a.m. But it's I think that they phased a lot of this out, which is, I think, kind of a shame, because I think this creates a really interesting dynamic, especially for a JRPG, because it's basically telling you can't grind. Like, you really can't. Like, that's going to take up precious time when you could be collecting materials and making stronger equipment, which is going to be more significant than grinding up levels. So I do think that it's a little bit of a shame that they've kind of phased this out, but I think that's also because later games especially really want to have that kind of chill vibe, and like the chill vibe is still there in these early games. It's just also like you can't let yourself get lulled in, because if you do, then you'll be like, oh, actually I fucked it all up.
Yeah. So it was probably a decision made for the sake of like streamlining and making onboarding easier for more casual players.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably been for the best in terms of getting the series popularity, because people like who like the game really liked the kind of chill vibes of it, kind of hangout vibes. It's just very pleasant, and going, okay, I've got 3 years left, I need to do this, and this. If I don't, I'm gonna get a bad end. If I do, I'll probably still get like a mediocre ending. Let's go. Like, so I think, yeah.
Would you describe these older games as like LoFi JRPGs to study / relax to?
God. Oh my God. I'm interested to play. Because from what I've heard, the second trilogy after this Ireland series is the Dusk series, and apparently that gets really interesting in terms of tone and story in a way that other ones don't. And then the other one, which is right before Ryza, is the Mysterious trilogy, which is now also getting a new game and getting a direct sequel, which is weird. But that's supposed to be like kind of the most chill ones, I think. So it'll be interesting to keep playing these, but I'm not sick of them yet. So
well, okay.
I'm still, yeah.
I have one last question. And
yeah.
I suppose we could move on after that if you want, unless we want to talk about Atelier more. But
hey, I'm always up for that.
So with their kind of chill, casual vibes, what are the stakes at play? Because like usually JRPGs, it's like, oh, we're fighting God to save the entire universe.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I kind of like about some of these games. Like Ryza eventually gets into like, hey, we gotta save the world, but it's like still kind of chill about it. Whereas the first game in Ireland, Ramona, is if you don't, your alchemy workshop will be shut down. Like, it'll suck, but you're not really saving the world. It's like basically kind of establishing yourself as an alchemist. In Totori, it's interesting because your whole goal is to find your mother, who is an adventurer who's missing, which I mentioned to Alex as being similar to something we've...
Is your character named, oh God, I was going to say Rika, but what was her name?
Oh God, what was her name? Abyss-chan.
Yeah. Oh God, why can't I remember? Rico.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but it's but like it has like an emotional story to it. Like the bad ending I got, spoilers for the bad ending of Totori, is you can still continue your being an adventurer. That's fine, but you're told you'll basically never achieve your goals in life. Like you can still work. You can still be an adventurer. You're not going to get kicked out of the Adventurers Guild, but you're probably not going to achieve your goal of finding out what happened to your mother.
That's fair.
And then the second, and then the good ending is getting more closure on what happened to your mother. But it's like, it's interesting though. It like is a lot more character focused, which is interesting too, because the characters in the side characters in Verona are a lot better than the side characters in Totori, which I think is why in the like DX versions, like the deluxe remasters of these,
those
they've
Switch,
just
right?
Yeah, and that's what I've been playing it on. Yeah. They basically are like, okay, we'll make the characters from Verona playable too. Whereas it's like, because you're just kind of like, okay, the side characters, I'm like, oh, they all kind of suck, really, except for the ones that came from Verona. But it's really like a lot more character focused on Totori, which is really interesting. So I don't know. I think these are just like really cool JRPGs that do some interesting things where it's either character focused or focused on the vibe of it, just the kind of the chill vibes. And I'm just like, it's also, I think I mentioned this in our Discord. I mentioned this on Twitter, where like you find a game series that is like made for you, and I kind of feel that way about this series now, which is fun.
It's cool to find something that you're interested in. Excuse me. You're interested in kind of exploring the ways in which the series evolves, the differences in from game to game, structurally and mechanically. I think that's like, I've recently hit a place where I'm like fine with playing bad games. I don't really want to spend $60 to $70 on a bad game, but if we're talking in the like $20 to $30 range, it can be worth it to me to play something that's bad or that is, you know, a down point for a series, just to understand the progression and development of that game series a little bit more. Not that I'm saying that anything that you're playing is not good, but I mean, just like, more broadly.
Especially since I heard a lot of like, there's like especially with talking to people about like where to start with the series, because I think that's like a pretty common question, considering there's all the different sub-series and everything. Like a lot of people have made a lot of comments about like, oh, what's aged well, or what's too punishing when it comes to that. But it's like, I think it's interesting to kind of explore it, even if it's for like sure. Even if I'm like, man, I'm going to be okay with my normal ass ending for now, because I don't want to go back into this.
It goes into the, I don't care if the jumping is good in Good Life, you know, like that's what I want out of games anymore, is to be, sometimes it's to be challenged, but most often it's to just have interesting experiences that
me too,
that are unique, or at least you know, everybody has I'm going to play Elder Scrolls 6, and it's probably going to be roughly the same kind of game that Elder Scrolls 5 is, and I'm going to love it and spend 200 hours playing it. But generally what I'm looking for is stuff that's like interesting and different and makes me think, I guess, is really what it engages the brain. I wish I had picked up a couple of these in that sale that they had. I got like analysis paralysis as to which ones I was interested in getting, and then I was like, well, I should probably start playing it with Ryza, which I still think I would want to do. And that goes on sale a little more frequently. So
it sure does.
Yeah, maybe I'll wait till I'm actually going to play it, because I probably won't get to it until later this year.
Yeah, and like the other games go on sale less frequently, but also they go on sale more frequently, I think, on Steam. So
yeah, which I can get.
So which is
that's where I'll be buying JRPGs from now on as Steam Deck.
Oh my god! I was just thinking,
and that thing looks fucking amazing.
It's amazing how Steam Deck for me has gone from put $5 on it. No, I don't know if I want it, to like I need this machine in my life.
Yeah.
Because that is my like going to be JRPG and visual novel and weird indie game machine.
Also, we don't have it in news, but a lot of videos have been dropping of the Steam machine and like them just like showing off random games on it. And that's definitely making me feel like that.
And
not the Steam machine, the Steam Deck, but yeah.
Yeah. The Psychonauts 2 footage that they put out, that there's like a Twitter account that's like playing like games running on Steam Deck. It must be Valve that is doing it, but maybe it's
I think so, because they have a Steam Deck, like a verified Twitter, which is basically like showing off.
I think it was before it was verified when I saw it. That's why I wasn't positive, but if it's verified, then it's definitely Valve. Yeah, and it's just like off. It's just off screen footage of games running, and they showed Psychonauts 2 running, and it looked incredibly good on that thing. It was running at 60 frames a second.
I know.
I will put a link to that in the show notes because it looks great.
Yeah. Anyway, I have been also, as Alex alluded to, playing with time.
Speaking of games where you can live in a universe where every time you start a playthrough, it has events that happen on a set schedule in which you can interact with them in a way that makes some kind of sense.
Although in Outer Wilds, you have to do everything. You have to see everything, or you will never complete the game. I had mentioned last week that I started playing Echoes of the Eye, the DLC expansion for Outer Wilds, and I have finished it at this point. I'm going to talk about it as vaguely as possible, but if you are someone who was like, I love Outer Wilds, I'm going to play this DLC, I just haven't had time, but I'm already sold, skip ahead to the next timestamp, just because, I'm not going to talk about anything specific, but hey, maybe you don't even want to know things structurally about this DLC, and that's fair. With that said, though, like, it is, I was saying next week that like seeing the like opening bits of it was really powerful again, and it never really lets up. It's so intricate, and there's so much care put into every like inch of what is in this DLC. And, I don't want to say specifically like what you're doing in it, but it is structurally kind of like, hey, there's another place here now. Like your loops are still starting the same way that they did before. It's not like it's like a separate menu item or anything. It's what I think is the most impressive thing about it to me is you could almost like narratively, it's not really, it would have been weird for them to make this a sequel, because like to make it a second like executable that you were launching, because it isn't, it's very
executable. Sorry, please continue.
Do you know how long in my head I was like, I don't want to say this word because I know that however I say it will be wrong to someone. But I was like, I don't want to. That's why I usually just say application.
It's fine.
Subject. Executable. That it is a very complementary piece from a narrative perspective, and it doesn't really. It just makes sense that it is DLC, but it also took me like 12 hours to play this thing. It's not like I was expecting it to be like 3 or 4 hours, and it just sort of keeps going in a way that's very satisfying, not in a frustrating way. And it's a new basically location to explore and discover, but it's also one that you can spend 12 hours pretty much kind of plumbing its depths. That's not it's like spoiler for what it is or anything. And I think what is the most impressive thing to me is that even though it is part of the game and complementary, virtually everything you do, except for the basic acts of like walking around and jumping, is a new thing that wasn't a piece of, it's not like you're like using those crystals that was in the base game or anything. Those don't show up at all. There's like one thing I can think of that was in the base game that you go like, oh, I have to deal with this. But for the most part, it is like almost entirely, it is all new mechanics and all new ways to solve puzzles with the same basic idea of like, Yes, it is a time loop. Yes, there are events that happen. Yes, they change the environment in certain ways, just like they did in the base game.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's. I have not played the DLC. I don't know if I will. I liked Outer Wilds, but it wasn't as like revelatory for me as it was for some. And I've been hearing a lot of discourse about it and reading a lot and listening to podcasts like Nextlander and other such places, where it sounds like there is a very distinct thing that happens in this DLC, like that everyone points to and they're like, this thing has happened and you're either going to love it or hate it. Everything after that point. And I don't know what that is, so I'm not going to spoil anything.
So I guess
it seems like it's divisive, specifically what happens there. Quote unquote,
it pops up with the menu thing, so it's not an enormous spoiler to say, like when you start the game for the first time, even because I played this on PC. I played the base game on Xbox, so even though I was starting with like a completely fresh save and install on PC, it still popped this dialogue up where it tells you can turn on a thing called reduced frights in the menu, which should tell you
not even that, but sorry, yeah, it wasn't about the reduced frights. It was a thing that happens that you engage with.
Oh,
I don't know what it is, but
I guess I can kind of see what it is. If people are complaining about that, then I think they probably don't like Outer Wilds, frankly, because it's a thing that is very core to what Outer Wilds. There is a certain thing that does happen while you're playing that is introduces it's a thing that happens every loop, and it is definitely something that is like, oh, I have to deal with this now. But I guess to me, that's core to what Outer Wilds is. I mean, that's the whole thing about it. So I would be surprised if people who really like the base game don't like that thing that happens, I guess.
I would recommend listening to the latest Nextlander podcast, wherein
I'll take a listen.
Vinny Caravella, who is a big fan of it, it was episode 19, Across the Shyamalaniverse, from Nextlander, where they spent a long time talking about M. Night Shyamalan movies. Probably like 10 to 15 minutes. Anyways, Vinny talks about being a very large fan of Outer Wilds and saying he didn't really like this DLC.
That's definitely shocking to me.
Yeah. The TLDR on it, and again, I haven't played, so I don't have the context, but he said there's enough randomness introduced with what happens with this that like he was trying to plan for certain things to happen, but because it was random, he couldn't count on something happening.
So, did he finish it?
I think he had not finished it by that point, but again, this is me recounting another person's experience.
I understand. So. Yeah, I'm more using it as a base. So I think that's an interesting. I will definitely listen to it, and I'm not trying to put words in Vinny's mouth, but that's something that I think is present in the base game, but that perhaps you would not have encountered based on how you solve puzzles in the base game. There isn't randomness that matters that happens here. Nothing. You can count on everything that you need to happen to solve every puzzle happens every loop. But I can see how you would think you need certain random things to happen if you're trying to play with certain solutions that your brain stumbles onto. But that's not there. There's no, like, there are some sort of random things that can happen, but it's basically like, think of it like, to make it to make a connection to the base game, Brittle Hollow has like rocks hitting it, and like the floor is falling away as you're sort of playing through it, and it is random where that can occur, but it doesn't actually matter for your ability to progress through the game. It can seem like it does, because you might go like, oh, I really need this platform though, I really need this piece of land. It doesn't really matter, but I can see how you would think that it would. Sort of similar things are at play here, but I think the thing that could put someone off is that there is a distinctly, although maybe there's a specific there was one part of it that I thought was a little frustrating, and maybe I'm totally off in what he's talking about, because there is one sequence that I can see being frustrating because of the way that the pieces in the world are moving, and it's less about solving puzzles and more about executing on just doing something.
Like it's just the mechanical act of completing an action, right?
And sort of what I will say is, this is related to the reduced frights thing. I need to look at what happens if you turn that on, because there are certain first of all, I didn't find it particularly scary at any point, really. But I can see how if you are someone who is like, I would probably tell Sam, you need to, if Sam were to be interested in playing this DLC, I would say, please turn reduced fights on at the top, because you will not have a good time if you do not, because there are bits of it that, again, I just thought were cool. But if you are really averse to horror games, then you might not like certain parts of it.
And just as a broad question, is it a horror game in the sense of like an Amnesia / Outlast kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think some of the things related to that I could see, like I had one part that I played through where I think I maybe, I don't know. I think there's this thing with, this is a broad horror games bit. This isn't spoilers or specific to Echoes of the Eye necessarily. Good horror games are actually good Amnesias, like that kind of like genre of modern horror games. They're not actually that hard. It's actually usually pretty easy to escape the thing or to get around it.
Sure.
But they give you the feeling that it won't be. They make you think like, oh, I need to be so careful here because it could see me. When really, like, if you watch, there's a lot of Amnesia videos out there that are like, oh, the AI is actually pretty stupid, and you can kind of clown on them if you once you understand their patterns.
Or like Alien Isolation kind of stuff.
And sort of to, this is sort of again like a sort of broad connection, not a direct like there's a monster chasing you around. That's not necessarily what I'm saying, but some of the scarier stuff in Echoes of the Eye, I think you can it can appear to be a lot less forgiving than it really is, if you look at it. But I'll have to listen. I would be curious to know what Vinny's actually talking about, because I think there's a couple of small sequences that can appear much more frustrating than they are if you just kind of don't approach them too analytically and just sort of go with your gut. And in some ways I actually appreciate that about it, because so much of the base game is just the puzzle solving, that introducing a bit of like, you just got to go, man. You just got to execute on this thing and do it. And I don't feel that the controls necessarily get in the way, but I also think that there is an aspect of it that I think it could have been tuned a little bit better. Let's put it that way. It could have just been a little bit more player friendly, and it would have probably felt less like less bumpy, maybe is the way to put it.
It still seems lovingly crafted though. Like,
even
if you're trying, if we're having to poke holes in it to say like, oh, it could be imperfect for some people, that's fine. It still seems like they put a lot of time, effort, and just love, effort, and attention and affection into it. So
it's astonishing to me that they made this thing in like essentially 2 years, a little less than that even, because it is. I mean, it's so much of it is new. I mean, it's all. There's stuff happening here that are like whole new systems that are being introduced, like physics wise.
Like, and again, we have to kind of step around spoilers, because the whole thing about this game is that it's a story and you're interacting with the mechanics in the way the story works, which is cool. But like, you messaged us several times being like, I thought I was done. There's nowhere. I'm nowhere close to done. And what was your final play, like hour count, more or less?
It took about 12 hours.
Yeah, that's significant.
And that was without using guides or anything. There was one thing that I looked up, much like the base game, where I knew I was near the end, and I was like, I think I'm right about this solution, and I don't want to. I want to just. I don't. It's hard to say directly what it is without spoiling, but I just want to like confirm that I'm right, so I don't spend a whole loop doing something that is unrelated, basically. Or if I'm wrong, then I waste a half hour. because I already have all the information. I just want to make sure that I solved this correctly. And I didn't even look at the solution. I just kind of looked at like a vague hint that someone put in a guide to make sure that I was on the right track.
Oh, cool. I'm glad that people are putting vague hints in there. Kind of, it's like the LucasArts style of hints.
Yes, there's very good Steam guides that do that. But anyway, otherwise I didn't use a guide, and I'm at around 12 hours, which I think is a satisfying way to play it. I think it just kind of, most of the stuff just kind of clicks. There was one solution that I banged my head against for a couple loops, and then I was brushing my teeth 2 nights ago and was like, oh my God, that's the way you do it. And then sure enough, like the next morning I tested it and it was right.
Aha moments rule.
Yeah. So yeah, I think if you liked Outer Wilds, this is more but different enough that it doesn't feel, it also the narrative is so good, and it feels like so much like it was there all along, which is the point. And it makes me want to replay the base game with like, and see it all again, kind of with that knowledge of what has happened in this DLC in my head. Cool. Because it's definitely, if you haven't played the game at all before, I definitely recommend, hopefully you weren't listening to me talk about it, because it's better to go it as blind as possible. But I would say, definitely play this DLC kind of alongside with your playthrough of the base game, because it's a really nice complement to what's happening narratively there.
Cool. And I guess again, one last question: does it kind of feel like a Outer Wilds 1.5 more so than anything, like, or is it more significant, or is it more integrated, or like
it's so narratively it's so much a part of, it's hard to describe because it's so much a part of the base game story, but it's like you didn't know it was there. Like it could have just been an optional side thing in the base game and it would have made sense. It doesn't feel like they were like, even if this is what happened, it doesn't feel like they finished the base game and they were like, what if we also told this side story? It feels very much like it's just been happening alongside what you're doing
currently.
Mechanically, I would say 1.5 is probably a fair way to put it, but it's only because it's got so much new stuff in it that's so different. And so I think what it really does is one, I never thought we would get more Outer Wilds, so it's a joy that they even did, that there was enough of a reason for me to spend 12 more hours playing that game, other than just booting it up to fly around, which I do sometimes. But it makes me so excited for whatever they're doing next, because I feel like anything is possible. I feel like they could return to Outer Wilds if they wanted to. I feel like what's more likely is that they'll do something completely different, but that's super exciting too, because the people there, like, this to me Echoes of the Eye is like, somehow they managed to catch lightning in a bottle twice. And that is very impressive, because it's every bit as good as the base game to me. And cool. I think that's really exciting.
Given how much you love that base game, that's saying something pretty significant.
Yeah. And it's hard to say, like, it's very easy to I mean, Echoes of the Eye is like easy game of the year for me, like in the sort of looser, we can include DLCs and expansions as entries. Like, this is no question. I mean, I haven't played anything this year that has engaged me in the same way or anything, even though there's stuff I really liked this year. And it's just sort of on that higher level. I mean, of course, I should set this top too. I play tested this game. My name is in the credits. So like, obviously it's, you have to take what I say with a grain of salt anyway, because it's my favorite game, but I guess there's an additional one, but they also didn't pay me or anything. They sent me a code for the DLC, but I asked for it on PS4 like a doofus for some reason, and I wanted to actually play it on PC. I don't know why I said PS4, so I ended up buying it anyway. So I did not get paid or anything for it, and I didn't even end up really using the one benefit I got monetarily from it, which was the code. But yeah, I don't know. If you like Outer Wilds, you should play it more, or play it for sure.
And if you like adventure games / good narratives, you should play Outer Wilds.
Yeah, for sure.
One leads to the other.
feel free to message me on Twitter for vague hints if you need them. The other thing that I played briefly, we'll touch on before we talk about some news, is Circuit Superstars finally came out of early access.
What's Circuit Superstars? I saw you write this down. I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, so I played, I don't know, I don't even think I talked about it on the podcast. I played a very tiny bit of this when it was in early access earlier this year, maybe it was last year. Circuit Superstars is a cool game. It's a top-down racing game. And by top-down, I don't mean directly top-down. It's kind of isometric. It's kind of like if you've seen Art of Rally, sort of similar perspective going on here. And it is cool because it is a arcade sort of top-down racer that was developed by people who are like really enthusiastic about real-life motorsports. So it takes a lot of ideas from sim racing and from real life, which obviously takes a lot of ideas from real life racing. And it makes for a really, really cool, there's sim racing. One of the things that makes it so cool is, yes, you feel like you're driving a car, but it's also got a lot of things with like pit strategy, tire management, fuel management that are incredibly interesting concepts that racing games basically never touch on, because why would they? If you're doing like a 4-lap race, like why would you bother with that stuff? So what Circuit Superstars does, it's cool, is it includes things like tire degradation, fuel management, car damage, and pit stops, and incorporates them in. And it is arcadey. So basically it's like if you do like a 5-lap race, you're not really going to have to manage your tires or your fuel at all. But if you do a 20-lap race and the lap times are like 30 seconds, kind of the average for the tracks, if you do like a 20-lap race, which is like 10-ish minutes at 30 seconds a lap, you definitely are going to have to take a pit stop. And so you start to do things like plan out like, well, do I want to try to, and one thing I'm not positive of is what their tire degradation model looks like. I don't know for sure if it's dynamic enough that you could tire save, which is something you can do in a real car. It's basically like tires degrade more the more they're loaded up from side to side. So basically, like if you're pushing the car around a corner and putting a lot of lateral G-forces into the tires, then that causes them to degrade faster because they're having to do more work to keep you pointed in the right direction and keep you from sliding from side to side, basically.
So you don't know if it's like just a more linear like time scale thing versus
I'm not positive
how much quote unquote wear you're actually putting on it because of drifting or whatever. Yeah.
I'm not positive. It's hard to test because of the nature of the game, since it's like very much like very fast paced, lots of turns and stuff. It's hard to like drive gentler on the tires. But it's totally possible that you can. And either way, you're still having to decide, do I want to, because you notice the tire fall off in this game. When they get down to like 42%, there's a little meter in the corner that tells you what your tires are at percentage wise. Then they get down to like 42%. It's like, okay, I have much less grip. The car is slower, which is just like what happens in a real car when the tires degrade. So you do have to think about like, well, do I want to try to go, maybe I'll lose 3 or 4 positions and I'll be in like 4th place going into the last 5 laps. But if I wait, I can then come out of the pits and have fresh tires and go way faster than everybody. And maybe I gained positions while they were taking their pit stops earlier in the race. So there is like some strategy at play in terms of how you want to pit and stuff. And it's really cool to see that in this sort of bite-sized races. It's also impressive because the tracks are kind of whatever. They're not real world tracks. Obviously they're like, they look kind of like go-kart tracks. And there's a lot of them, but they're fine. What I do like though is the car selection is pretty extensive. They like sort of looked at broader classes instead of specific real life cars, but they're all based on real life classes. So you've got like, they call it I think they're called Pacinos. And they're like kind of like, yeah, they're like little hot hatches. They're kind of like Clios or something. And those are sort of like the starting car. or they look maybe like smart cars. That's probably a better touch point. Little tiny hatchback cars. But then they go up through like the kind of Grand Prix. It's not really a career mode, but the set of tournaments that you can do that are like Mario Kart tournaments. They have like you go up to these like featherweights, which are kind of like hot roddy looking Caterham-ish cars, and then you've got like there's a semi-truck one that I just did last night that's like the semi-truck racing semis that they have in Brazil and the UK, or in Brazil and Europe, all the way up through like modern day formula cars. So there's just a wide range. They have things like prototypes, they have GT cars, they have rallycross in there. There's a bunch of different kinds of car classes, and they feel very different, which is pretty cool. And it's cool because you also the general control and circuit design is informed by real racing. So instead of it being like, you still do a lot of drifting and sliding, but instead of it being the like Hot Wheels Unleashed and Mario Kart system of like get on the brakes just to initiate a power slide and then boost out, in this game it's more like, no, you want to brake and then do your turn in, like if you were racing more of like a real sim racing thing.
Yeah, you don't want to get too much heat on a dog day afternoon, especially if you get insomnia. Once upon a time in Hollywood, and Donnie Brasco is all like, nah, you're not the Godfather with your Pacinos.
It's one car. It's one car. No, just joking. But yeah, I don't know. It's a cool thing. The one thing that I'm a little concerned about is that the player count still seems pretty low, and online racing is like, I think kind of, I did in preparation to talk about it, I did do one match made race, and I got into a race with one person, one other person. It is kind of a cool system, in my opinion, where you just match make, and then it pops up with like 3 different options. It'll be like, here's a Pacino race where everyone's Al Pacino, and there's no tire degradation or fuel or damage, and it's 5 laps around this track. And then it'll be like, here's a GT car race, and it'll be at 125% tire deg and 100% fuel consumption and 50% damage. Or here's like a mini tournament where you're going to do 4 races, 5 laps each, whatever. And then everybody votes on which of those 3 things they want to do. Then you do it, and then if you stay in the lobby, you vote again. So it's kind of cool because it sort of pushes you to do a bunch of different stuff in the multiplayer. I kind of like that about it. I did like
just when you thought you were out, they pull you back in. Exactly,
into the Pacino. It might be Picino too, I'm not sure. It's like Picci.
Oh, okay,
something. That's different. Yeah. But I think it's supposed to be Picino. Anyway, spelled different. But I did a 4-race rallycross mini tournament with this other person, and it was very exciting. I won.
Oh, interesting. So sorry, it was the same person, and you did like a whole circuit?
Yeah, like it was cool. Like a Mario Kart kind of championship sort of situation, where each of the races was only a couple minutes long, but we did 4 of them, and I won because I won 3 out of the 4 races, and they won 1 race. And since there were only 2 of us,
were they close?
It was pretty close racing in a couple of them, and then the netcode was pretty okay. They were in this series, it was ghosting when you got close to each other, like you couldn't hit each other. Okay. Which I don't know if that's something that they introduced across the different series and stuff. My cat is freaking out over here. I don't know if they if that's like something that they do across online series. I think ghosting is fine, but I think it would be kind of a shame if there was no way to turn it off, because collisions matter especially if you're going to model things like damage and stuff, and the damage does fuck you up. So yeah, I don't know, but I would assume in maybe it's disabled in public lobbies, which would maybe make sense, but in private ones you can keep it on. The thing I think this game really needs is better crossplay. I think it has Xbox and PC crossplay right now, but if I hear there's a lot of people playing it on PlayStation, I may end up picking it up there too, because I would like to be able to play it against people online here and there. It's a perfect kind of like I did. Well, literally what I did last night was I practiced for an iRacing race that I'm doing today for like an hour and a half, and then I was getting ready for bed, and I was like, I'm going to play this Circuit Superstars game for 45 minutes or whatever. And it's good.
Cool. Sounds like a very Pat game in a
yeah, and I think it's
an affectionate way.
if you also are into like the idea of some of the stuff that's in sim racing, but you don't want to do sim racing, like this is a controller game. You don't play this game with a wheel
for sure. So this is very like accessible for
sure.
people who are interested, like kind of interested in some of that, but not wanting to go the full
absolutely
sim racing route.
It's like people who want to play PGA Tour versus a little golf journey.
Yeah. And
you can play Forza Motorsport series versus Circuit Superstars.
Yeah. It's
maybe
it's
not exactly, but
it's $20 too, so it's not like it's super expensive or anything. It's a small studio that made it, but it's published by it's in that Square Enix collective thing where they like they're like indie label. Yeah. So yeah. Cool. Yeah, I recommend it. They're apparently going to do ranked seasons, so that would be cool if it picks up some steam and has that. Yeah. With all of that said, let's talk a little bit about news.
Yeah.
The news.
We'll get the most important story out of the way first. The Froggy Chair is finally here.
Yes.
It's finally arrived for everyone.
God, starting the show with a showstopper.
Well, yeah. It's talk about games as art.
Froggy Chair.
We have the Froggy Chair. And there was a New Horizons Direct. There was it's generally, I didn't watch it, but it seems like people are positive on a lot of the stuff in the expansion.
I think that like following people who are very, very into Animal Crossing to the point where it's like they've played thousands of hours of this game and they still play it every single day. They are extremely positive.
Like of this game or Animal Crossing in general?
Mm-hmm. No, this game.
I think both too. Like because a lot of the additions are like people are like, this is exactly what I wanted from this kind of direct. So people are jazzed.
People play New Horizons like Destiny, like every single day.
Yeah,
for an hour or two a day at least.
Yeah. And then people are like, this is like a significant addition of content before you even get to paid DLC, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but it looks like there's quite a bit of additional stuff that people are just super jazzed about, and it just happens to be including the Froggy Chair, which is
other than the Froggy Chair, what are some of the hits? Like I didn't watch the event, so
gyroids are back. Let me just see.
Do they still wiggle around?
I think so too.
I mean, they'd have to. Why even do it?
Yeah. So they have people can come over to your stuff. You can. They're adding shops to Harv's Island, which is a thing. Brewster's is added. There's cooking now. You can farm now. There's group stretching, which you can do with your
that's very good
with motions. So it's very cute.
I'm shocked that farming wasn't a thing already.
Yeah. But they're doing that. So there's just like a whole lot of a whole lot of content, and people who are big on Animal Crossing are like, this is exactly what we wanted. So it's kind of nice to see that it looks like they got what they wanted from the
update. I mean, some of the critiques of that game was that I remember from more hardcore Animal Crossing fans was like, hey, there's not enough here happening from day to day. Like, it almost feels like what Nintendo kind of those past games had to have everything in them because DLC wasn't really an option in the same way. So it sort of had to be like, it had to have years of content built into them that would kind of trickle out over your playtime. Whereas this game, it's almost feels like they were like, well, we can add stuff after the game comes out. And then they didn't for months. And it kind of seemed a little dry from a content perspective.
Yeah. And it seems like a lot of the things that people are saying, well, I like New Horizons, but it would be nice if they added this, like that they took all of that and went yes, and then they added all of that, which is really nifty, and happy for Animal Crossing fans. I'm gonna pick up the game for the first time in several months, if not almost a year at this point. And
get that froggy chair.
Froggy chair, and have my villagers be like, Allison, where have you been? We missed you.
Then you see, what's her name, Anka or whatever, and then you're just like extremely awkward because you've seen those TikTok videos.
Oh my God.
But so have they explicitly said that this is like the last update for this game?
They said this is the last like major update, so that they're not like, this is not like the last update, but this is like, here we're putting, this is the last like major content change.
This feels like a very Nintendo way of saying, don't ask us for more. We'll decide if we want to make more or not.
Honestly, probably, yeah. This feels like here's what you asked for. Don't ask us for anything else ever again. Mm-hmm. And like, I mean, people who are fans of Animal Crossing are generally just, so I don't know, but yeah, it does feel like, like this looks like it's a pretty significant update. There's a lot of people who like have significantly optimized their islands to the point where like mine looks like a piece of shit compared to theirs. And they're like, now I have to redo my whole fucking island because they're adding farming and I need a farm on my island. And I'm like, man, my island is like jank compared to yours.
You're just ahead of the curve. You're ready for farming.
Exactly. Exactly. I was leaving stuff open for farming.
And making use of the space.
Is the expansion actually $50, or is that just for the year?
So no, you can buy the DLC for $25. But if you're doing it's free if you do the Nintendo expansion online, whatever they call it. Free.
Is that so? What I want to know is, if you buy the $50 pass for Nintendo Online, and then the next year you're like, I don't want this anymore, do you still get to keep the Animal Crossing DLC?
See, that's a good question, because like, if you got to keep it, then I'd be like, well, of course I'm doing the online because I'm looking to buy this, and it's like it's additional $30 for online. So it's like, okay, it's $30. The DLC is $25, so it's like, you know, it makes sense, but also.
But if you lose access to that DLC after the year is up, then that seems fucked.
Like,
that's kind of how it works with PlayStation Plus, right? Because anything you get from PlayStation Plus, if your membership lapses and you try and play it, then it's like, okay, you don't have access to this anymore. Either re-up or pay for the game or whatever.
Yeah,
and the DLC, it seems to be mostly like. Basically, and it's basically Happy Home Designer, the 3DS game, but in New Horizons. So it's kind of like...
Which was a bad standalone game, but seems like it would be great integrated into an actual Animal Crossing game.
See, that's what I've seen. It's like people are like, this is what we wanted from Happy Home Designers, to have it be integrated. So I think... but I that's an interesting question, and I
don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Otherwise, like... whatever. It seems like Nintendo is in a position similar to Disney, in that when Disney Plus was announced, I was just like, well, this is just going to be in my budget. I'm never going to not have the thing that lets me watch the Star Wars and the Marvel stuff.
Okay, I found an answer to that question.
Okay.
If you buy the DLC through the Switch Online subscription and then later cancel the subscription, you won't lose access to the new furniture, walls, lighting, soundscapes. You won't be able to visit the place where you've built these, but...
Fuck off.
So the data will still be there, but you can't get access
but you'll be like the stuff that you've unlocked for like the main island, you can still use.
Yeah, but you don't... So really... If you're a hardcore Animal Crossing person, what you really need to do is pay $75 so that you have the DLC forever. I mean, I guess you could pay $50 and then $25 later if you don't want to keep the thing. But like,
Yep.
This is a very Nintendo solution, and it feels...
but you're like, but basically from what I see, it's like you're able to take the furniture that you've remodeled, basically remodeled the homes with, bring it to your main island, and all of that will still be there. You just won't be able to. Basically, the idea is that these are like vacation homes for your villagers.
Yeah, so I get it.
You can't visit the vacation homes anymore.
It just is such a weird... it's such a weird way to do it. Why not just say, look, it's amazing, we're going to be able to fleece you for $50 at all, have the DLC, just keep it. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, I mean, from Nintendo's perspective, I kind of get it in one very particular sense to devil's advocate them, and that's like, if you are no longer a member, you no longer get access to like those emulated N64 and SNES games. And if they're thinking of it that way, I guess, but it's still very stupid.
The difference is that they're selling the DLC also as a $25 standalone thing.
Yep.
So
no, I agree.
My perspective on it is what you're telling me is I can either buy this thing for $25 and then I've paid $45 for Switch Online and this DLC this year, and then I have the DLC forever, and next year I only have to pay $20, or I can pay you $50 for the privilege of also playing some N64 and Genesis games this year, and then next year when I go, oh, turns out you only added like 4 of each of those. I know they've announced more than that, but 10 of those, and they're not the ones I want. And you didn't, and instead of putting Ocarina of Time on here, I can't, again, maybe Ocarina of Time is part of the list, but the game that I want, you actually put out in a limited time bundle for $85 instead of like giving it to me in this subscription. Forget this. Oh shit, now I got to pay $25 to buy the annual card. It just is so not friendly to consumers, in my opinion. I don't get why they have to be so, all of the content sounds good. I'm not shitting on them from like like
it's just kind of a bizarre way of doing it. And I personally, as somebody that uses my Switch more than pretty much any other gaming device, I'm like, oh well, this is a no-brainer for me because I'm interested in playing that, and then also I'm sure that whatever they keep adding to that expansion pack, it will probably be something I'm interested in. But like we were talking about, like if you're interested in only like a handful of things for it, it's just really not worth it.
Well, and it feels like I gotta pull up the list of what the N64 games that are coming are, because it feels like if you are just looking at this from like my perspective, I loved my N64. That was like my first console because we just had I've been playing video games longer than the N64 was around, but we had PCs. We didn't ever buy a game console until the N64. And if you're like, hey, for $50 a year you can play N64 games on your Switch, that sounds really I'm like, well, I'd rather just buy them one by one, but whatever, that's a great addition to the service. It makes sense that you would charge more for it. But when it's gonna be the games that they're gonna put out for it, like, come on, like the N64 games available at launch. Dr. Mario 64, okay, good game. Mario Kart 64, okay, good game.
Pretty good game.
Mario Tennis, good game. Sin and Punishment, Star Fox 64, Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Winback, Yoshi's Story. Winback is very funny. Yes, Winback is coming to this for some reason.
Okay.
Like, is that a list of really good games? Yes, like pretty much all of those are good games.
It's a list of definitive first party games for the N64
and Winback.
And Winback.
The things that kind of the thing that is kind of a little bit bizarre for me, and I'm not sure why, if this is true, I'm not sure why. Apparently a pretty proven Nintendo leaker is saying that the likely reason for the cost is the licensing costs for the Genesis stuff. And if that's the case, why have the fucking Genesis stuff in there?
I don't give a shit.
there are so many Genesis compilations out there. I have one for the Switch that has more games than that. So it's like if that's the case, then it's like to what extent does having Sonic 2 justify like a significantly higher cost when you can play stuff like that or like Echo the Dolphin anywhere, and there's like a million different compilations, Genesis game compilations that are for sale on like literally every single console
device. But like the question for me is like in my opinion, I do pay for Nintendo Online and Nintendo Switch Online. I think it's kind of a mediocre service, but I do because it's what, $20 a year. Now they've more than doubled the price of it, and I don't feel like what they've added really makes
what I'm
significantly better.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where I'm going to get it because like I'm interested in that DLC. I'm interested in the Nintendo 64 games. I'm a Nintendo sucker, so I'm like, I'll do that. But like, but if you're not at that same position where you're like, okay, I love Nintendo 64 games, I really want to play that Animal Crossing DLC, so it's worth it. But like, how many people are in that exact kind of where it's worth that $30 additional.
The only cases I can really see, I've heard people say that the family deal seems like it's actually a pretty good deal because you essentially get like, I forget, like 5 of these memberships. For
80?
Something like that. I don't remember the exact details, but the only other reason I can see is if they make like a Super Mario 64 $99. Like, like one of those Tetris 99 or Mario 35.
I guess that's
but like
the thing is
N64 ROM hacks.
Mario 35, let's be honest.
$20. If my feeling on it is like I pay for Game Pass Ultimate. I think it runs out what I had. I got a ton of that time from having Xbox All Access, but still I'd be paying $15 a month for Game Pass Ultimate. No problem, because it includes PC Game Pass, console Game Pass, and Xbox Live, which I don't really use that much these days, but you never know. And so cool, fine. PlayStation Plus, it's kind of like, it's not great that I have to pay $60 a year or whatever for access to PlayStation Plus just to play games online, but hey, you get games with it too, and there's a pretty big library there, and et cetera, et cetera. The base Nintendo Switch Online, $20 a year to access their online services, fine. Do I use my Switch
NES
that often?
games or SNES games too?
Yeah,
like,
and those things were like a good boost. They were like a good bonus.
Right. Like, it's like you're paying for online, and then you get that stuff. You get Tetris 99. I feel like
it's not what you were subscribing for.
Right.
Well, I mean, I like having that because I think that they've done a good job of adding interesting NES and SNES games. Yeah, and granted, I haven't played a ton of that, but if you like retro games, like I feel like you could spend have a great Switch experience where you didn't buy very many games and you just played the
and what online they did stuff. Was Game Pass is good whether you like playing games online or not, because it comes with all these games. PlayStation Plus is good whether you like playing games online or not, because you get games every month. Nintendo Online, good if you like playing games online or not, because if you're into wanting the SNES stuff, then you get it. And it's $20 a year. But having a $30 online expansion where you're paying an additional $30, and the only thing it's adding is like, I would pay $10 for any of these N64 games, but I don't want to have to pay in perpetuity to access Star Fox 64.
I would pay a dumb amount of money that nobody would also pay, so that I could play Paper Mario on my Switch. Like OG Paper Mario. Yeah. But it's like, it's tying it to this is very weird. I think the one thing that is at the very least, and this is like small justification, is at least it's like an expansion, and they're not just going like, hey, online's $50 now.
That would have made
it worse. But at the same time, it's like, again, like small victory there, where it's like, if you can still do the online stuff and still get all of that stuff without adding this, but like, It's
to some degree, though, even though if they were just like, look, we have to increase the price of Nintendo Online because in order to justify doing it, we have to increase the price. And here's some stuff we're giving you to improve the value for you. While I like this more because I don't give a shit about this stuff and I don't want to have to pay $50 a year, it would almost make more sense to me if I were a regular Switch user than this weird, like, well, you can get the baby edition where you don't get anything, or you can pay $50 and play Star Fox 64. It's like
the baby edition.
Xbox Live Silver versus Xbox Live Gold.
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like personally, again, as a Nintendo apologist, I get more value from this than from PlayStation Plus. Personally, just because a lot of the games, if I'm interested in a game for PlayStation, I'll usually already have it, and it's very rare that like the PlayStation Plus games are more than like, it's interesting, maybe I'll give it a shot. Like personally, there's like rarely a game of like, oh man, that's like exactly the game I wanted.
That's the same for me, for sure.
Not since Journey came out like a week earlier on PlayStation Plus, and that was like 10 years ago.
Right. So it's like, so personally, but at the same time, like there's like, again, that's personal preference too, in terms of I spend too much money on video games. So
I forget to redeem stuff on PS Plus sometimes.
Oh, me too. Me too. I'm like, that was on PS Plus. I'm like, well, I probably didn't redeem it.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely do too. And it's very like, I feel like the couple of games that I have redeemed and actually played are like weird indie games that I'm like, that looks kind of interesting. Like, yeah, I played too much of Tricky Towers, which was I got from PS Plus. But anyways, it's I don't know.
We can move on. We talked about it for like half an hour.
I know.
But
Froggy chair.
It's an interesting Nintendo being Nintendo.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I mean, like, I love Nintendo, but again, it's like one step forward, two steps back with them, or one step forward, one step back, so they're kind of like
that's treading really the best way to put it.
Space.
Yeah,
and you're just like, okay, I guess.
It's just weird.
Sure.
I'm gonna say the same thing I've said for years at this point, that Nintendo continues to just bumble along doing Nintendo things, and they're gonna be successful for all time.
Except I don't think this is bumbling. I think this is very calculated. I think this is
a
fucking course people will pay $30 a year to play Star Fox, and they know it, and they're actually going to make a shitload of money on this.
Yeah, and I'm enabling it.
Well, I mean, a lot of people do. Absolutely. It's like I said with Disney Plus. I mean, I get it, because while I am not going to pay $30 for their thing, Disney Plus was announced, and I was like, yep, well, I'm going to pay for that forever.
Yeah, no, totally.
Of course, I want to be able to watch all of the Marvel movies and all of the Star Wars movies in one place.
Right.
So
it's like, I might say fuck you, Disney, but I pay for Disney Plus every month, and I saw Jungle Cruise in theater twice.
Yeah.
So it's like, I say fuck you, Disney, but I'm like, oh fuck yeah, there's a new Star Wars anime thing, and so it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway,
we're at that point where it's like,
in cooler news, well, I don't know. The Animal Crossing stuff is cool, so I don't mean to say it's not, but
I mean, it's Nintendo being Nintendo.
We've got some Microsoft is doing some work to try to support right to repair, which is
awesome.
I just had a conversation about this with a colleague yesterday, which I think is potentially very cool, the way they're making devices easier to open up and repair, essentially.
Have you read why they're doing it?
No. I'm looking at the article right now.
One of the core reasons that they're citing is that they want to do it for they're essentially setting up a study to evaluate environmental impact of device repairability, so that rather than people like having, like, iPhone is a primary example of this, where Apple does not want you opening it up and fixing stuff. So what people do is they throw them in the garbage, or like they hold on to it and then eventually the battery dies or explodes or something, and then it becomes e-waste.
Yeah, or it's like, or it's just like I definitely have a couple of devices lying around my apartment where it's like, well, it'd be a pain to get rid of, but also like it's no use to anybody. But
or like, unfortunately, you have to, like, I had some monitors I need to recycle. Currently, it's going to cost around $200 for me to recycle them.
Right.
Because it's so fucking expensive to recycle electronics. And it's
dude. And so it's like there's no incentive to do it, because it's like, well, like,
I mean, they're sitting in my sitting in my closet, but what I want to do is throw them in a dumpster, because I'm like, I don't want to pay $200 to get rid of this junk.
Yeah, I have like 2 laptops ago, I have it hanging out in my apartment, and I'm not saying
I'm going to throw them away, by the way. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, but it's
frustrating.
Like, it's annoying, and like I personally, my console thing, like with like my old PlayStation consoles, I tend to give them to my sibling, because it's like, hey, they upgraded to a PS4 now, and they don't have to pay for it. But it's like, if I didn't have my sibling to give my old consoles to, it's like, what would I would probably just dump it, because it's like a lot of space, and like in apartment space, and my apartment's small, so it's like I don't want extra consoles hanging around. And
and like I still have all of my old cell phones and stuff like that from like 10 years ago and stuff like that. I'm
pretty sure I have like a Samsung Galaxy S2 somewhere.
Sounds about right.
With my stuff, where I'm just like, I need to find a way to get rid of that, man.
Yeah. So, so I think it's a really positive thing, especially for game consoles, frankly, because game consoles tend to get a lot of use, and they get a lot of use over a lot of years. And components, like, yes, components are designed to last a long time, but everything eventually dies. Like, nothing is infallible. So like being able to replace a capacitor, like the original Xbox, there was a bunch of revisions where there was a capacitor that just would explode if like you didn't touch it. And like Microsoft kind of addressed it and told them, okay, this is the part number you can replace it with, which is good. And people just stock that replacement part forever. And it's just like, yeah, here's a design schematic, go in there, replace it, and you can continue using your original Xbox for another 20 years. And that's a positive thing, because like if you basically want to have your console's functionality that it had, when you opened the box the first time, because that does degrade over time, then having the ability to do so and have it be officially supported, rather than feeling like you're voiding a warranty by opening it up, like that's hugely positive.
On that note, the thing I was talking to a colleague about, the flip side of this is
modding.
You need to understand that if you break something, that's yours. Like that's the problem that we run into in the industry that I work in, is we get cited right to repair laws a lot on things in different states. And it's like, well, the product I purchased from you wasn't working. And explicitly, there are products that are engineered and designed to not be taken apart even by technicians, but person takes it apart anyway in such a way that it cannot be put back together to be functional again. And then they say, well, right to repair, I had a right to open it up and try to repair it myself. Now that I haven't, you need to give me a new product because it's broken now. And you can't fix it, but it's under warranty, and the law says you still have to service the warranty. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see as this stuff propagates at a base level. I think it's extremely positive, but the ways in which it's one of those things that I am concerned that, like, there's so many things that I believe in as being the right way forward, but then when you put them in the hands of society at large, they're like, well, we're going to fuck it up and make it worse for everybody because we can't just be chill and cool.
Right. Because I know enough to know that I should not be opening up hardware myself, and that if I had something like this, that I would take it to like a repair shop or something. Well, but also there are going to be plenty of people who go, no, I can do this. Like, I talk to people every day where they're like doing because like I work for the city, and like I talk to people every single day where they're doing like these giant construction projects on their own. I'm like, probably shouldn't actually. You know, you should probably hire somebody to like do your whole fucking roof or whatever. But it's like people like, are, if people say like you can do it on your own, people are going to take that to the extreme.
Yeah, like I think there's definitely cases to be made for things like how if someone solders something incorrectly and they cause a short and all of a sudden this thing catches on fire, like, you know, that's not great. And sure, like you should have at least some amount of competency with, or proficiency, I think is probably a better word, a proficiency with using the tools in play to be able to do this. But like at the same time, like I think I actually also heard this on the Next Liner podcast. They were talking about like back in the 90s, like that song from that show. Back in the 90s, they like you would go around the corner and you would have like a VCR repair shop, you know, like like those existed back in the 90s when this was a thing. But you don't so much get that. Like you kind of get the like phone repair shops now, kind of, where you get like
but that's mostly like your screen breaks and you don't want to pay for a new phone.
Exactly. And what they're doing often isn't really like intricate solders. It's more like they're replacing modular parts, and they are certified to have those parts by Apple,
and it's just a
Samsung,
business
whoever.
arrangement. It's not that they're particularly proficient. It's just that they pay for the license to be allowed to do it. Totally.
Like it's the kind of thing where if you as an individual could pay for a new camera for your phone, you could totally replace that, but you can't. And if you try to purchase those parts from those places, they lose their license, and now they don't have a business anymore because Apple and those people actively discourage them from doing it.
That's the part of right to repair that I wholeheartedly support, is finding a way to find a middle ground where we can rebuild that infrastructure of having people whose jobs it is to fix things, and people having access to them for affordable prices and not having to just buy something new so that it doesn't just get thrown away, but also not look at it as the situation that a lot of places are in now. Not a lot of places, some places, and the laws oftentimes they can't get you're protected as a business selling the stuff too, where it's like, well, I'm going to try to fuck this up myself first. And if I can't fix it, then I'll send it back to where I bought it from, and they'll have to give me a new one.
I think that is a scenario that should F that.
Assuming
that would be dumb.
a company like Microsoft, like you know that if they're doing this, they are like having like a million lawyers look at this and going like, what is going to be,
for sure.
But also, I personally, as somebody that is like the first line of answering questions, I feel for the customer support people who have to deal with that.
But
who are like, no, you can't do that.
Are y'all familiar with the Fairphone?
Vaguely.
Yeah, the Fairphone 4 just came out, or is coming out very soon. I forget. Yeah, it's pre-order now, so it's coming out very soon. Where it is a modular phone, where you can take the backplate off, you can replace like pretty much everything with modular parts that you get directly from them. And if things started getting designed in that way, that would be a really great middle ground, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just finding that middle ground. I think it's right to repair falls into a similar, wildly different thing, but it falls into similar places as like self-driving cars, for example, as being something like, if enthusiasts are getting self-driving cars, they're probably also paying very close attention to the operation of it. And it's more just a like, I'm interested in helping to develop this technology. I'm not using a self-driving car so I can take a nap on my commute. It's when it gets into the hands of people who are taking naps on their commute that it's like, okay, well, now the self-driving car is running into people because the AI is not quite there yet. And it really still needs somebody to pay attention and babysit it. And you're not doing that. Right to repair is a similar thing where like someone who's buying a Fairphone, perfect. That's like such a cool community of people who genuinely are invested in. And if they do break their camera while they're installing a new one, they're probably not going to go to Fairphone and go, well, you got to give me a new camera now. Instead, they're probably going to go, oh, shoot, I did this. I got to get another one.
Yeah, the type of people who buy Fairphone are like the people who are really invested in it and like enthusiastic about it. Whereas like
the modules for Fairphone, you're not soldering. It's very much like putting together a modern PC.
Yeah.
Like it's so like I think that becomes the nice middle ground is if you're not having to recap something, like take out the capacitors and resolder them in and add in resistors and stuff like that, and have to understand how all the ohms interact with each other and your amperage and all that kind of shit. Like you're not having to do this with a multimeter. If you're literally just like kind of like pulling out your graphics card and putting in a new one, or RAM slotting in a new one,
and that makes it easier.
I think that would be a really
nice, and that makes it easier for if NVIDIA, if you like have stems snapped off of your video card and then you try to RMA it, NVIDIA can go like,
bro.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different. Yeah,
totally.
And in closing, I want to share with you not actually share it, but I saw a TikTok that was a person going, my son's grounded, so I pulled his video card out of his PC, ha ha ha, and it was a delitted CPU and not actually a video card.
Oh.
It was a joke. I think they knew what they were doing.
If that was real, a delitted CPU, that would be rough.
One of my friends accidentally, his thermal paste was so like,
oh no, like caked on.
It was like so caked on and stuck that when he tried to remove the cooling unit, it delitted the CPU.
Dang, those pins are holding on hard then.
He was fine. He fixed it. He eventually used some solution to get the paste off and to clean it and everything, and just managed to keep the pins really clean and safe. So
that's amazing.
It was fine. But we were like, he was like, is it supposed to look like this? We were like, no, it's not.
Yeah, like, well, that's the kind of thing where it's like, well, now you may as well try liquid metal cooling.
Yeah,
you've already delitted it. Anyways, it's cool. I hope that right to repair stuff happens, and this happens with Microsoft, because they are a huge player, and
totally.
If it, like, one of the biggest players, and if they normalize it and they exert their influence, and I think the environmental reasons are completely valid, then hey, there's nothing negative there.
Yep, agreed.
Absolutely.
We can we gotta hit the accelerator a little bit on some of these, because I think we could have a half-hour conversation about each of the news stories that's coming up. But Steam's will not allow games which rely on crypto, NFTs, or blockchain. It's a deeper discussion to be had about blockchain and new work distribution methodologies that don't lean on proof of work. There's a potential for blockchain as someone, I think crypto and NFTs, I think, are a blight on society. So I'm not talking about that. There are certain new ideas about blockchain management that would lead to much less disastrous environmental implications that I hope are adopted, and I hope the proof is in the pudding and down the line. I will say that, like, if you are a crypto advocate and you're screaming, well, the blockchain's going to get better, do the fucking work first, and then maybe we can talk. Like, as it stands, proof of work is still the prevailing methodology behind, like, blockchain work, as far as I know. So, like,
blockchain as a technology, and we've talked about this, blockchain as a technology is not something that needs to be bastardized and needs to be made out to be like some evil boogeyman. Like, it in and of itself is not particularly scary. It's the applications with things like crypto and NFTs that make it shitty. And unfortunately, those, like you said, those are kind of the driving force behind a lot. Like blockchain is the driving force behind all of those. So it kind of ends up being kind of recursive upon itself, where, a lot of changes in blockchain come from crypto and NFTs, unfortunately.
I mean, you could kind of say, like, is in a similar way where you could say, like, well, computers are bad because crypto is bad. it's not necessarily true.
It's the way you could say like a Postgres database is evil because some white nationalist website used a Postgres database. Like, no, that doesn't make Postgres as a database evil. It was an evil application of the technology.
And I just think, but I also think like what I tend to see in crypto communities that respond to this thing, it's like if you say NFTs have the potential to destroy the environment, then some crypto bro comes in and writes like a 10-tweet thread about how you're wrong. And it's like, okay, the bottom line is there are still farms in Northern California running 1,000 video cards in a warehouse.
Yep.
And until that stops, none of what you're saying makes any fucking difference. So
and people who are like people who you say that and they're like, well, actually, it's only Ethereum that's the worst. And it's like, yeah, but it's like also, but it's like, yeah, that's the most common NFT for crypto for NFT. So it's like
cryptocurrency is a fiat currency that's not based on any real value, and it's
I find.
Which is why you can use it for money laundering, not to suggest anything, but I've definitely seen a lot of discourse about NFTs being this like perfect fun.
Well, don't even get me fucking started on NFTs.
Okay, I think we on this podcast, especially as a whole, can agree NFTs are fucking stupid as shit.
Yes,
especially their current application. It's just stupid as shit. I can see. Sorry, go for it.
This is completely irrelevant, but why is it that 99% of the NFTs you see are just like hideous?
Oh yeah, they look fucking atrocious.
Cash grab. It's a pyramid scheme cash grab. It's just a way to get people
you see it's like this like ugliest avatar and you're like, you paid $1 million for that? And again, I know it's a cash grab, but at the same time I'm like, you'd think that you could have better aesthetics for your NFTs rather than like, I don't know, some really shitty like character creator that was put on random and they go, here you go, pay $1 million for this.
It's garbo, which is dumb. Like, so yeah, NFTs stupid as shit. I don't think there's any real reason for them to exist. I can understand the appeal of crypto. Like, I think it's a really fascinating application of blockchain technology, but I think the execution as it is currently is the worst, and the impacts it's having on the world is the worst. But from a critical technology standpoint, I do think it's kind of cool, but it's just that's purely looking at it as like a concept rather than how it has actually manifested, which is a nightmare.
I think it's cool to shoot rockets into space, but it's a complete waste of resources to do it so that Jeff Bezos can see the curvature of the Earth. Like,
right? It's like I think that there's, I think crypto can be interesting, and it's something that I'm interested like for example, like I think that most NFT, like most if not all NFTs are frankly stupid and like not important, but I like reading about it. I think it's interesting, but at the same time something can be interesting without having, I don't know, everybody jump into it right now.
It takes one piece of legislation for the hundreds of millions of dollars that some people are invested into crypto to just like poof.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, China's already started on that, so.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think that is, I think it should be regulated, and I think that the fact that regulating it will cause the value to go into the toilet is a perfect example of why it's not a good thing to be in the place that it's in. I'll say, like, to kind of I guess compromise or whatever, like there was early on in the crypto thing, there was a trading card game, a digital trading card game that was coming out that was like, hey, look, this game uses the blockchain in order to make each card unique, even though there can be lots of copies of them. So it's similar to a physical trading card game in that your copy of this card is yours, and you can sell it to somebody else in the same way that you would sell a physical Magic card. I think that was a really interesting way to do it. And it wasn't like you were mining for cards. That wasn't what you were doing. You were buying packs of cards from the company that made the game. And it was for fairly comparable prices to things like Hearthstone. It wasn't like they were jacking the prices up into the stratosphere because the cards were on the blockchain. But I think that was like a cool, interesting application of the technology to say, like, this is like a sort of a closed marketplace of like your cards have value in, even though it's not like Hearthstone where it's just like, oh, I got a fourth of this legendary card, so it just gets dusted into half the dust I need to craft a different legendary. It was like, no, I got this extra card I don't need. Now I can sell it for $20. That's cool. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that kind of concept, but like it being an international monetary system that is not backed by any government or like any real good is like, come on.
And with all of that being said, I think Steam taking a hardline stance on not allowing crypto and NFTs, I'm with you. That's fine. It's great. It's cool. I think it's a positive. Banning blockchain, whatever. But
I think that it makes sense for now, though. I mean, like, I think that in the future you could have interesting games with blockchain, but like for now, when it's so harmful as it is at this point, saying like, no, we're not going to have that. You could definitely still revisit it. It's not like it's forever, but it's like saying right now there's a permanent ban on NFTs, crypto, and blockchain.
But in classic Tim Sweeneyism, he said he was like 2 weeks ago, he was like, nah, fuck all this. And then Steam said something. And because basically Tim Sweeney's whole existence is to just say, the big guys are doing it, so we're not gonna, or the big guys won't let you, so we will. And also be a huge fucking nerd on Twitter about it and obfuscate the fact that his company makes billions of dollars and they are not the
So basically Tim Sweeney was like, Epic's open to it. Just in like
after literally 3 weeks ago he was like
what was it?
Nah, he's like, no, we're not going to get into that.
Give me a second. I'll see if I can pull up exactly what he said earlier. It was
if I recall, what he said 3 weeks ago was that Epic's not interested in NFTs in particular, and I believe that what their stance is that
they're open to blockchain.
Quote: "We aren't touching NFTs as the whole field is currently tangled up with an intractable mix of scams, interesting decentralized tech foundations, and scams." That's what he said a few weeks ago, and then now he's like, "Hey, NFTs seem pretty fucking cool, huh?"
It's weird. I don't know. It's whatever.
We can move on.
What I'll say is, I used to be, and I still am from a culture war perspective. I used to be like kind of clown on people who wouldn't buy a game because it was on Epic, because I was like, "Come on, like get over the whatever." Now I won't do it, but it's not because I have some like boycott of Epic going on. It's more just because their store is so incredibly bad. I don't ever want to have to launch it again.
It's so bad. Epic pops up on my screen. I'm like, stop it. I'm just like, stop doing that now.
Chivalry 2 is one of my favorite games of the year, and you still can't reliably play in parties because it's built on Epic's friend system, and it's completely broken. And like Torn Banner won't point the finger at Epic because they don't want to ruin that
relationship, right?
But I'm pretty sure that's the problem as an amateur, not knowing that much about network infrastructure. But it works fine on consoles. Like the party system is great on PlayStation and Xbox, but it doesn't work at all on PC. And they go through Epic.
We could definitely dive into that, but maybe another time.
Anyway, I'll be interested to see when it comes out on Steam next year, where I'm going to buy the fucking again and treat it like it's the first release of it, if it'll work better. Because anyway, there was some talk about Metroid Dread emulation. I feel like it's another big topic that.
Oh, we could talk about this for an actual hour.
Holy shit!
Yeah. Like, people are mad that people were emulating it because
people were mad.
Yeah, people were mad. And then, there was, what was the article I saw? I saw another Kotaku article, I think it was, that was about Metroid. Oh, about credits. There was
right. Yeah.
There's
God, I saw that. That's shitty.
That was
denying people credits for their work is horrible.
Yeah, and there was some disconnect between people who are like mad that people were emulating the game, but then also didn't want to be critical of Nintendo for the stuff with the credits. And it's like, okay, so what you're telling me is you're just caping.
yeah, very much. And like there was also other reports that came out about how Mercury Steam was like kind of a pretty toxic place to be working in general.
Yeah.
So like, there was a lot of discourse this week. I don't know if we can cover all of it.
No, but I do think my stance, I'll say personally, my stance on piracy and emulation has changed significantly over the years, where I still am anti-piracy from the perspective of it does harm developers. And like, I have mixed feelings on DRM, because I think you see when companies release DRM free titles, people do just pirate it, and it leads to like a massive decrease in sales, and a lot of mid-tier and smaller publishers can't afford that. So like, it doesn't make me pissed when, even though it's Microsoft, it doesn't make me pissed when Deathloop has, you know, Denuvo or whatever it had in it for a couple months, because like, if they didn't, it would get pirated. At the same time, I'm also, if someone's doing cool emulation stuff with Metroid Dread, because they're pulling it, you know, not to like shit on the Switch or anything. It sounds like it looks really good on an OLED, but I've heard when you dock Metroid Dread, it's not a good game to play on a big screen. Like, if you're finding ways to emulate it in a cool way, I don't think you're a monster for that. Like,
I think it's fascinating.
I think you can have a measured response, which I think is where I'm at too, where it's like, on the one hand, you know, if you're doing cool stuff with it, that's cool. But on the other hand, also Metroid as a series, like people are saying like big corporations don't deserve your money, which is true. But at the same time, if you want more Metroid games, it's probably going to be beneficial to buy a Metroid game.
Yeah.
I doubt that, like, the trouble you have to go to emulate it, to me, is like, I don't think this is like rampant piracy. It's more people who want to see it. They're probably buying it on Switch anyway. And then, like, if you're buying it already, I don't see the problem in doing what you want with it. Right to repair for software, I guess.
To
like,
the point where I've seen people argue,
that's a whole
if you
topic.
can't afford $60 games, then you should still be able to play the games, which is like a whole thing. But like, if you're able to, but if you're able to emulate Metroid Dread on a PC, you probably have a piece. You're probably not like in a financial situation where $60 is going to be a significant issue. So, like, I mean I mean, there could be those fringe cases where you bought like a top of the line gaming PC and then lost your job or something. But you really do need to have that kind of quality gaming PC to be able to do that kind of level of emulation of Metroid Dread.
But kind of. Like, it doesn't have to be super top of the line. Like, you can have a 3-year-old gaming PC that's pretty, you know, it's modern, but it's not the top of the line, and you'll still be able to run it better than the Switch can. And I think that's the issue, is that like people are wanting to play it at 60 frames per second, and the Switch isn't offering that to them. But like, and like that, you don't need a beefy PC to do. But like, if you want to play it at 4K 60 frames per second, then you need something better.
And honestly, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please continue.
I was gonna say, I want to play Metroid Dread at some point. I will probably go through some of these emulation tricks depending on how hard they are to do it and play it on PC. But I'm gonna buy it.
Same.
Switch to do that.
I agree.
Especially
I think,
since Metroid as a franchise, part of the reason it hasn't had many games is because sales aren't great. So it's like you kind of like, you know, if you want more Metroid games and you like Metroid Dread, you should probably support it financially. But at the same time,
and
also, sorry,
some of the core of this discourse was that people were mad at, I can't remember if it was Polygon or Kotaku, but people were mad at the website that ran the story about the emulation because it was like promoting piracy or something. Which is ridiculous.
Which is like
shut up.
That's the biggest of stretches.
And then the same people got mad at them for reporting on the credits thing.
And also people were getting mad at Kotaku, but then they weren't getting mad at PC Gamer, and you're just like,
there's some weird double standard stuff going on.
And I don't even really like Kotaku, and I do like PC Gamer from a like where I like to read articles perspective, and I can still tell you that's fucking bullshit. That
yeah, well, I mean, to get mad at one outlet for reporting something versus
anyway,
another.
It's
a whole pile, and
support the developers, except for the fact that that developer in particular seems kind of shitty in some ways, but support Metroid,
especially support indie developers. The answer.
Yeah,
well, and also,
and it did come out that this was the best-selling Metroid game. I think either fastest or best. I forget if it was one or both.
But. It's definitely up there.
Keep in mind too that it doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about and speak out about the fact that if they are toxic at Mercury Steam, that should be brought to light and interrogated and change should happen there. But we saw stuff around Fulbright earlier this year, which is like indie darling studio and one of my favorite studios, and that is it can happen anywhere. So my weekly reminder, like, keep in mind that if you are going to go really fucking hard on something and you're going to make part of your identity like, let's go after toxic developers, just make sure that you keep in mind that you need to very much keep your nose clean and look very closely at every piece of media you're consuming if you really want to that.
Totally.
So, I think my personal feeling is the better way forward is to talk about these things and engage with them when they come up and support better working conditions for people, and also understand that like you can play League of Legends without being a terrible person as well. Speaking of which, they removed all chat from League of Legends.
Wasn't it okay? To my understanding, didn't they turn it into an opt-in all chat anyways? And then now they've just removed it altogether?
I don't know if you can turn off team chat, but you can certainly mute your whole team in about 4 seconds when you start a match, which is what I always do. And so you can effectively turn off all chat, not just all chat, which is what we're talking about here, which is the team-to-team communication.
Every type of chat.
Except for, and this is why it works, except for pings, which are a much more effective and faster way of communicating in public League of Legends games anyway. So I find I play League maybe once a month or two. I find I can play as effectively as I would if people were typing at me by turning everything off and just looking at the pings, because I'm playing at like a bronze level. So obviously if you're playing at a high level, it's complex enough that you need to communicate, but and it was optional.
Call your teammates Suka and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Now they've just removed all chat altogether, which I think is the right play, because like League has a very toxic community.
The community just can't fucking get along.
Nope.
So they've removed. They've been put in timeout forever.
Yeah. Speaking of MOBAs, there's a new Dota 2 character, Marci. It was a cool little video from the Dragon's Blood show.
Yeah, I'll make sure to post that trailer there. And something fun about Marci, and it's causing a lot of discussions on popular Dota 2 communities, is in that show, Marci is mute. Yeah. Like, she does not speak. So there's like all these thoughts of like, is she going to be a purely passive skills character? Are silences not going to work on her because she's mute? There's talk about how that's actually going to have mechanical implications, in which case that would be very cool. That would be really cool.
It's a dangerous thing, I think, because plenty of characters have active abilities that don't involve them speaking, and silence affects those abilities too. So I think to use disability as a way to make one character mechanically unique, you're walking a fine line. I think it has to be deployed really carefully, because it could just be seen as like we're just using. There's such a fine line between using, whether it's through disability or just that she doesn't speak, like a choice, whatever. There's such a fine line there between representation and sort of almost mechanical tokenism to a degree, that I hope that they really think about it, but I'm sure they will too, because the people who make Dota are really smart.
Yeah, like, and people at Valve and the Dota team in particular are pretty sensitive to that kind of stuff. So I don't think they would just be like.
I'm not really worried
they
about
wouldn't
it, but
be like flagrantly shitty. I would hope.
Yeah. It will definitely be interesting.
Yeah, but it's a good little trailer. She looks rad.
I think one of the cool things that Dota manages to continue to do is like it's why I tend to play League more, but I also respect it with Dota, or one of the reasons I tend to play League more. Dota characters are so like, whatever, man. She's like got like a gi on and she punches shit and she can do some fire stuff with her punches or whatever it was in the trailer. Versus like League when it's like, she's an anthropomorphic seal that has a mech that also there's a guitar attached to the back of the mech and it plays sounds, and it's like the League characters are always so conceptually like, League characters are always so conceptually out there. They're always just like, what are we looking at here? Versus Dota characters, which tend to be comparatively simple, and I think it's really cool that that Valve has kind of maintained a more grounded approach to their character design, even if when I'm actually picking which executable to click on, I go like, but what if I was the squid person that has a spaceship? I still think it's cool.
Yeah. Man, I don't even know. Okay. Unrelated but related. I tried watching some of the League current, is it LCS that's going on right now?
Yeah.
I find League really boring to watch.
It's not as interesting to watch as Dota by any means. I like playing it more because it's easier for me to keep up with, and I think that the mechanics are the way the mechanics change is more interesting to me from season to season, but it's boring to watch compared by comparison.
There was this weird, okay, this is just totally unrelated now, but there was this weird lack of polish in the watching experience that I was like, what the fuck? Isn't League like the biggest game in the universe? Like, where it was like the blue team has vanquished the dragon, and I'm like, you couldn't put that C9 vanquished the dragon when you're having a professional tournament that you are organizing? Like, I was like, what? Anyways, little stuff like that. I was just baffled.
Yeah.
Anyways,
so Final Fantasy XIV has made a lot of money. Sounds like Endwalker is cool. Those are
well, those are two long discussions we could have. I think Final Fantasy XIV has become the most successful Final Fantasy game in the entire series. So, which is great because it started as the least successful and the one that people thought killed the series.
I've seen so many on Twitter recently, like where it started, and it's like it's apologizing for Final Fantasy XIV to Final Fantasy XIV being most profitable, biggest RPG, MMO.
It's carrying Square, and it's it's critically acclaimed. Like as much as it is a meme, it is also very true.
Oh, it's absolutely true. Yeah, it's also just hilarious.
In my recent MMO wanderings, there's a part of me that is also like, man, I fucking wish Final Fantasy XIV had just been a single player JRPG, because it also, from an MMO perspective, everything it does is like stuff I don't like.
I mean, I feel that way about pretty much every MMO personally.
But it's also clearly stuff that a lot of people want. Like, I've come to realize that doing dungeons over and over again is like vastly uninteresting to me, and that's like a core part of Final Fantasy XIV. But at the same time, the story is quite good, and I'm glad that people really enjoy the community aspect that it being an MMO affords it. And I think the Endwalker presents an interesting point from which it can change and evolve more than maybe it ever has after that. So I'm excited to see what happens.
The other Final Fantasy XIV tidbit that we can jump into is that the media tour stuff happened this week for Endwalker, or it happened a few weeks ago, but the embargo lifted this week. So all of this, there's been a bunch of interviews and preview content that's come up, and one of the coolest things is that Yoshi P, the director and producer of Final Fantasy XIV, did 36 hour-long videos and interviews with like significant members of the Final Fantasy XIV community, and like it was just a really outstanding effort on his part, and the way he approached all those interviews was amazing. Like, apparently he did not ask the interviewers to screen any questions. They could ask anything they wanted, and because he is both director and producer, that means usually with those kinds of interviews, there's a PR person in the background that's like, oh, you can't talk about that or whatever. But no, he sets the rules. So he can talk about whatever he wants to whatever degree. And like, he ain't going to get in trouble because he's the one who runs it. But he's also extremely personable. Like, love him or hate him, the Asmongold has been a pretty major force in the recent MMO kind of everything. What with the WoW exodus we talked about months ago, and everybody moving over to 14. And recently in his personal life, apparently his mother has been very ill, to the point where he's had to stop everything he's doing to make sure that, like, take care of her, that she's okay. And he stepped away from that to join the interview. And the very first thing that Yoshi P said in their interview was like, hey, I heard your mom's not doing well. I hope you're okay. Is there anything, like, basically, is there anything we can do to help? Like, that's like, that was the first thing that he said in that interview. And it was just so humble and like humanizing. It was, yeah. So Yoshi P is a wonderful person and one of the best people in the, yeah, he seemed like one of the most genuine people in the industry right now. It's great. So anyways.
Yeah. I wish Asmongold, I mean, it sucks about his mom. I wish he wasn't like a Trump supporter and stuff.
I don't think
he feel a lot better about all this.
I don't think he is. He's come out. He's actively come out against Republicans pretty frequently from what I've seen.
He's changed then for sure. That's pretty. Yeah. That's good to hear. Because back in, he used to say a lot of use of the R word, some defensive racial slurs, including the use of them. So, hopefully he's changed for the better.
Yeah, from what I've seen, that's not really the case anymore. Whether it was before, totally, probably. But within the past 2 years, it looks like no.
Well,
anyways.
I don't know anything about this. Best Buy locking PS5s behind a $200 paywall?
Yeah, so, oh man, I don't have the story up for it, but... So they put up this service, and just give me a second. I have to find out what it's called. Total Tech. It is a subscription service where you pay $200 a year, and it gets you things like access to Geek Squad and like like the Best Buy services. They used to have like that gamer service that would give you early access for pre-orders and stuff. Like it's all that kind of wrapped up into one thing. However, there was a time, I think it was within the past week, that PS5s went up for order on Best Buy's website, but people were finding that if they wanted to do it, they had to sign up for a Total Tech subscription, which is $200 a year. So it basically locked the entire pre-order process behind this paywall, which is bonkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like that service, I mean, it does have a lot of other stuff, but I've definitely seen articles that are like, hey, if you want to get a PlayStation 5 for the holiday season, do you need to pay in a $200 for it? Which is like bananas, in addition to the cost of the PS5.
Yeah, and if like you're not going to use the rest of the services, if you're purely getting into it for a PS5, then Best Buy is essentially scalping you at that point directly. Right,
and it's like if you... I don't know to what extent you would need unlimited Geek Squad support, but like if you used that would be, I don't know, something. And if you buy a lot of stuff from Big Best Buy and you like, it has free shipping, free installation on stuff. So it's like, if you get all of your tech from Best Buy and you buy a lot of tech, it could be maybe worth it. But like also, if you just want the PlayStation 5, it's...
Yeah, if you are using Best Buy for everything, it's basically like what's it called, Apple Care for everything you buy, and like that's like it's like a pretty decent warranty program, and like that's pretty cool. But yeah, locking the ability to purchase a PlayStation 5 behind it, it's a little weird.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, yeah, more
Best Buy,
than anything.
Not the most. I think they're maybe trying to keep themselves afloat.
Well, yeah, because
not in the most consumer friendly ways.
I haven't gone to a Best Buy in quite a while because the one Best Buy that I used to go to was the one at the Mall of America, and that's no longer there. So that's like I kind of wondered about that, just because it's like that seemed like a big store for them, and that they just got rid of it. Again, though, it could have been that because I never bought stuff there. My sibling and I just had a game where we would go to the bargain bins of DVDs and each pull out a DVD and compare which was the weirder one.
Yeah.
That was our like idea. That was our fun game. Was like,
that's fun.
Who can find the weirdest thing in this bargain bin of DVDs?
That is awesome.
It was very fun because we found some really weird shit in those bargain bins, but also like I bought like a few things over there over the course of several years, and it was mostly stuff like I need a new mouse. That's one for $10, and stuff like that, which you don't really need a giant storefront.
Yep.
Or
support your local stores, everyone.
Oh,
speaking
absolutely.
of a giant local store, Amazon.
Oh God.
New World developers. New World's PR is just a total disaster. And it their marketing as a whole is a total disaster. There's a whole we don't have to get into it too hard, but we have a story here that's about how server transfers were a thing that were supposedly supposed to come. I thought it was supposed to come this week, and they haven't. But
they were pretty explicit about it too, weren't they? They were like, "Yeah, it's in the works. It's coming."
Yeah, and I guess at some point before launch, they were very explicit about like your region. Make sure you're on the correct region, because regions cannot be transferred. Like those are like locked in. And then apparently their Twitter account told someone that they can move regions. I don't know why they would do that, because as far as I know, that was never part of the plan.
Love a good rogue Twitter account.
And so then they caught backlash for it, which is understandable and reasonable, because you cannot transfer regions and probably will never be able to. So
there's a lot of reports of people in like Australia that have put like 80 hours in already, and they're just like, well, fuck that. I was anticipating that we could change this, but
I think it's tough because it is one of those weird, like, if this were, I don't need to defend Amazon at all. I think if this were a smaller team, a smaller developer, I would have been like, they made one mistaken tweet. Like, I'm sorry that it affected that you waste quote unquote wasted 80 hours, but it's one tweet, man. But Amazon doesn't need that defense, so whatever.
It's dumb, but whatever. It'll continue to exist, maybe.
What? I mean, the game itself?
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna shelve it anytime soon.
No, it's good. I mean, it's aside from the absurd marketing and PR disasters that surround every part of that game, and it being a bit of a social mess because it's Amazon, and all that stuff is gross and messy. But the game itself remains a lot of fun. It's a little light on content, but it's a new MMO. So welcome to new MMOs, everyone. You can play them for a couple 100 hours, and then you tend to have seen everything at that point, and you have to wait for new content. It turns out that just because it's an MMO does not mean that it has unlimited amounts of stuff to see from the first month. Totally. I am going to have to bounce pretty quick here, but I see that there was something, Alex, that you said that it says here that Alex thinks is rad.
Yeah. So this is something, it's not news. It's not anything particularly insightful, but you guys are all familiar with Inktober, right? Like the concept of artists making a piece of art every day in October. Making whatever they want.
I always try to do it and I never succeed.
So I randomly found this through like on Twitter, like some friend of the pod liking something, and I happened to see it and I was like, what is this? There's something called Umitober, which is Umineko focused. So obviously I'm going to be interested. But the way in which they're doing it is something I've never seen before. So I was looking at this one post from this account. I can post the account in the show notes if we want. But and they did this really great art. And then I noticed like the name of his like, oh, Umitober, day 15, active pain. And like day 12, I think, was Mirage Coordinator and all this stuff. And I was like, what are those titles are really familiar. What is this? And then I realized what they're doing is the theme of every day is a different soundtrack, like bit of the soundtrack.
Oh, that's
so people can do whatever interpretation they want of either that scene or the character that it's representing or whatever based on the soundtrack. And I was like, that's a really fascinating way to do kind of a themed Inktober-y kind of thing. And so I don't know. I just hadn't seen anything like that, and I thought it was kind of cool. So
yeah,
look up hashtag Umitober if you want. But yeah, I've not seen an Inktober kind of themed thing like that. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, that is.
I'm
cool.
looking at this hashtag, and there's a lot of cool art in it. People are town. People are really.
Yeah, they are.
I'm like, how do you do art good? It's my question for the day.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I love it. Anyways, Umitober. Maybe keep an eye on it, but it's just I want to see more themed stuff like that. I need to actually go through
Umineko.
Dude, do it. It's so good.
It's one of those things where I know for a fact I'll love it, but I just haven't done it yet.
It is a big barrier to entry because it's so long. But
it's a big thing, but I'm like, I know for a fact I'll adore it.
And you have to get past like the first 2 hours, which are kind of like slow and also kind of that Japanese anime bullshit of like, oh, look at her boobs, they're so big. Ho ho. Like
There's
you have to get past that.
Look at my cousin's boobs that I was like, that's why I couldn't through the opening of the anime.
Once you get past that, it's awesome.
I've been reading a lot more manga recently and watching a lot more anime recently, and that really is a hurdle you need to get for good content. You're just like, okay, I'll deal with this shitty fan service for an episode so that I can get to some good stuff.
So, minor spoiler to help people get over that hurdle, perhaps. The whole, oh, look at her boobs thing ends up actually being a core part of the story in that character is extremely insecure and anxious and feels like he has to act a certain way in order for people to perceive him differently. Yeah. And like they actually go into the psychology of it really well. It's great.
That's interesting. Someday I'll try to experience it and see for myself. But what I'm going to be experiencing for myself soon, hopefully, is some breakfast before I go drive virtual race cars. So
seriously, I am very hungry.
Yeah, so let's all go breakfast. Let's all go eat some breakfast.
Make some French toast or something.
I'm gonna go get some. I'm not gonna name where I'm gonna get some breakfast from because I'll get a lot of heat for it, and it's not something I need in my life. So
McGriddle.
You can you can speculate in my mentions about where I'm getting breakfast by finding me at PJC Plays. You can find the podcast at Fyx Podcasts on Twitter and Gaming Fyx on Twitch. Allison, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at WRITERSERENYTY, and I'll be having a bagel from a local family-owned bagel shop because that is the type of person I am.
Oh, if I had a local family-owned bagel shop as close as the place I'm going to go, I would be there as well.
Well, I mean, I have them at my place, but they're really good bagels too. Yeah, so,
Alex, where can people find you?
Going on some kind of little golf journey, probably. Other than that,
sweet.
Just crying.
Oh, that's sweet. Hopefully it's tears of joy.
Hopefully.
Enjoying really good video games. Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
I'm not saying Andre's thing because it's disgusting. And
who would say that? Who would monetize
enable
that?
Him by making art about that.
That art's really good. The art's better even than the phrase.
Oh, thank you.
Not that I'm a hater.
I worked really hard on it.
Yeah, you did a very good job.
It was great. It was beautiful.
All right.
All right.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Talk to y'all soon. Bye.